Everyone, and welcome to the December 19th Litchfield Budget Committee meeting. Call the meeting to order and start tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thanks everybody for joining us this evening. I do want to mention Mr. Cutter is out this evening, unable to attend, so thank you to Ms. Ames for joining us this evening on behalf of the school board. Moving into our agenda, do I have any review or additions to tonight's agenda? One quick note, I spoke with Ms. Kleiner beforehand and just now with Superintendent O'Connell when he walked in, but we are going to switch the order for warrant article presentations tonight. In kind of looking at the content, there's a little less on the school side tonight, so we'll let them go first, and then the town will go second this evening. With that, I will open it up for public input. I invite anyone up from the public this evening to speak. Just state your name and address, please, sir.
Hi, Dan Jones, Chief of Police here in Litchfield.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you. So at the last, I think it was the last budget committee meeting, $25,000 was taken out of the overtime budget for the police department. So I just wanted to address that as the reason from what I heard in the meeting for the removal of that was that previous chief or chiefs had said the addition of personnel would lead to reductions in the overtime budget. Mm-hmm. So the overtime budget doesn't live in a vacuum. In addition to overtime budget, there's also what's called in the budget special officers, which is really part-time officers. So in the year that was brought up, or a year specifically that was brought up during that meeting, was the year 2020. And in that year, in reality, we had two special officers who worked 32 hours a week each, which is a total of obviously 64 hours. Since then, we have lost one of those officers, and the other officer is cut down to 24 hours, which has led to a reduction of 40 hours a week, which is quite a sizable amount of money. So when you look at that math from 2020 to now budget year 2025, which is 5 years later, and you look at those numbers and then look at the budgeted amount then versus the actual amount then versus the budgeted amount now, and also look at the overtime budget, and you put those together because they're both used to fill voids in the schedule, and then you adjust for contractual increases, which over 5 years is 18.75%, or right, within a fraction of that. It's actually, there's over a $37,000 reduction in our budget when you look at those two together. And again, I would argue that they go together, right? It's you can't look at one without looking at the other. So to take out another $25,000, again, if you were to look at my budget and say, well, we see there's, an overabundance in there, we think you're way overestimating, I would have less of a problem with that than just saying, oh, we're taking $25,000 out because some other chief years ago said, there should be a reduction. And I would also argue that if anybody in the town who voted for these positions voted because they thought it would cost the town less, I can't imagine that that's the case, right? If people voted for additional positions, it's because they wanted additional services, and that includes the SRO, or the second SRO position, and another officer to fill other roles. So again, if you have questions about that, and I know I'm not here to question you certainly, but at the end of the day, your obligation or you have the authority to reduce my budget, but you're not responsible to provide services. I'm responsible to provide services at the level the townspeople voted for. And they voted for this number of officers. They voted for these certain things. And I feel like my hands are going to be tied to a certain extent because some other chief years ago said that there'd be a reduction in cost, and I'm arguing there has been a reduction of cost in the amount of $37,000.
Thank you, Chief.
Sorry, just to follow you, the two lines
Yeah,
you're
it's
talking
fine.
about are the PD wages, special officers, and the overtime.
So it's special officers and the regular overtime, yes, sir.
So special officers went from 97 to 63, and then overtime went from 96 to 103, is what you're saying. So it's a reduction.
So, right, a reduction, especially when you look at, again, the wage increases which were voted on by the voters, you know, through contracts over the past 5 years, so you can't say, you know, let's say the numbers were the same, it was 60,000 and 60,000, that's still almost a 20% reduction
Yeah.
in real terms.
Are there any other clarifying questions for the chief this evening? Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Yep, absolutely. All right, any other members of the public for public comment this evening? If you state your name and address, please.
Ronald Blinas, 15 River Circle.
Mr. Oblinus.
I have comments on both the town and school, so if you want, I'll start with the school, and then when the towns come up, talk to those as well, or how would you prefer?
It's your choice. We'll have a second public input, but it'll be after we go through all the warrants. I would say probably just if you want to go through all of it now, it might be,
Okay,
if that works for you.
let me start with the town and follow up with what the police chief said. My first point that I wanted to bring up is that the warrant article for the police station, in my opinion, is not ready to be brought before the voters. And the reason for that is the level of development is insufficient for us to even understand the full scope of the project and the true cost. To back up or support my assertion, I'd like to read you something that actually relates to the identical process, but only it's written by the New Hampshire Department of Education. And it talks about the planning process that should be adapted to avoid disasters in funding for projects such as this. And it's simply titled Funding the Planning Process. Funding the planning process in a world of shrinking resources and growing demands for public accountability, getting the necessary funding for a facility planning process can be extremely difficult. While much can be done by volunteers, at some point they will need to pay for the necessary professional technical services to analyze existing buildings, to prepare preliminary program and design studies, conduct environmental and geological investigations of possible building sites, and develop accurate cost estimates for the alternatives on consideration. Many districts are understandably reluctant to commit funds prior to a bond vote, but presenting the proposal to voters without adequate study and accurate cost estimates can be a formula for disaster. Their words, not mine. Conceptual drawings and rough cost estimates are not sufficient. It is unwise and very risky to promise the public that a building can be constructed on a particular site for a given cost without having conducted geotechnical site investigations and using only gross estimating techniques for the construction cost. When projects are proposed without adequate planning, the result can be significant cost overruns or major reductions in the scope of the project to fit within the budget. Worse, without adequate researching and analyzing all feasible alternatives, the district cannot be sure that the proposed project is the best solution. Possible sources of funding include direct appropriation specifically for planning and design work, funds from a capital reserve account, and funds from impact fees. Many districts approve planning and design funds one year with the expectation that a project will be proposed the following year. Sufficient funds should be provided through to thoroughly analyze alternatives, to conduct geotechnical investigations, environmental studies for proposed building sites, and to complete at least 50% of design work for any proposed construction. So if you take a step back, and what's been done so far for the police station is a conceptual floor plan. That's the limit of design. There is a elevation that's been designed. That level is about 5% of an engineering design. We actually don't have an engineer on board. So the estimates that are prepared are not based upon an engineer's estimate that we have contracted with. There is not cost in there for an owner's project representative. There's no cost in there for contingency for the town. There's a dispatcher's facility in there with dual dispatching stations, designed in anticipation of full-time dispatching, and a communications room for $1 million worth of electronics. Has the selectmen approved that we anticipate full-time dispatching? Have they considered that? There's a whole bunch of questions that have not been fully vetted. We have not analyzed this. I actually would argue that an alternative that should be explored is, instead of moving the police station to a new facility, we should give the police station this complete facility, move the town offices to a new site. My estimation, that'd be about half the cost of what's proposed here. My point is, this has not been vetted properly. I've come to the selectmen 2 or 3 times and said this has not been thoroughly analyzed. It's not been vetted. The Board of Selectmen have not engaged in this fully. There was talk of appointing a steering committee that never happened. If you go forward with this, we may end up with another LMS. And LMS was estimated for $5 million, and now it's 10. If you've been watching what's happening on the school board, one of the major reasons for, given by the survey that we just conducted, is the cost overrun at LMS and the distrust of the school board. And that results from failure to put together the LMS project in a reasonable and a thoroughly vetted process in line with what I just read. And that's what we are at now with the police station. So it's my recommendation that you rethink this and put together a warrant article to go out for engineering services that will take you through a thorough analysis of alternatives and come back with a specific estimate based upon the engineer that we have hired that supports next year's warrant article.
Mr. Oblinas, if I can just interrupt for a moment, that's not our responsibility to put that out there.
Well,
That's not even in our scope.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I was just going to add, I think if you were at a pause point there, I was just going to say, tonight we're hearing the warrant articles for the first time in detail. We're not voting on anything tonight. We vote on January 9th. I think you raised some good questions, and questions that if we weren't planning on asking, we should ask tonight when these warrant articles are presented.
and the reason I brought it up here is I can't get to every meeting, so I have opportunity to come and present them. Because the warrant article is going to be considered tonight, I felt this was the next place to bring it up. But you do vote on the warrant article, so it will be your responsibility to say yea and nay whether you support it or not. So you do have a say in this decision, and I wanted you to hear.
The reality is not out of line what we've done in the past. When the fire department came forward, the budget committee decided not to support it. And as a result of that, they went back to the drawing board. So I would say that the budget committee, because there is a financial impact, to say we have no say is inaccurate.
We don't even say in what he was talking about,
No,
writing
but
a warrant
it
article.
should factor into your decision as to whether
Well,
or not you
absolutely.
support
No,
it.
I'm not saying that some of the facts he just stated that we don't take into
And maybe
consideration.
I have other,
I have a lot of concerns, but
to quote one of my
I-
colleagues, I have concerns.
I think Brian's comment was around us pushing a different type of warrant article, which I
Okay.
did hear Mr. Oblina say at the end,
Right.
which I agree that's not in our purview. But I think all of the questions that he raised are good questions that are opportunities for us to ask tonight.
And
agree.
that's all I want to have is a thorough discussion of the warrant articles, because, people are looking at the budget committee, and if you don't know, the questions to ask, then it may slide through.
I appreciate that.
All right. The other comments If you remember, I came to the last budget meeting, and I still think there is can I ask one question of you? Do you, in your consideration for warrant articles, consider the overall impact that approving all the warrant articles that are sent forth would have on a tax impact? Or do you just look at the merits, so to speak, of a warrant article individually by individually?
I think it's gonna be, that would be more of a personal choice, I believe. Like, some people will look at it on merits, right? Some people may say, yes, that's great, I'll vote for it. Some people may choose to look at it in other ways. I know I look at it holistically, but it doesn't mean everybody else here does.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I think on the town side, the tax cap kind of forces that in a lot of those conversations. I think on the school side, I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's looking at needs and also looking at the tax impact and trying to balance those two out, because those two things don't always line up, unfortunately.
And okay, I'll pivot off that then. So, the warrant articles that the school side's gonna bring tonight total up to just around $1 million. They actually represent $1.5 million worth of expenditures. The reason being is there's $100,000 in there for the solar panels. And that is considered the first payment toward $700,000, actually it's $1.7 million. It's the first payment toward $700,000 buyout of the solar contract. But when you add them all up, it's, how we want to look at that solar panel one, whether it's the first payment of $1 million or you need to look at it holistically. That's another $1 million to $1.5 million, however you want to look at it. On top of what I mentioned the other night, the effect of taxes next year from the school budget is $3 million, the way it exists right now. Warrant articles will add another $1 million. There's articles in here that, for instance, there's proposed to put $500,000 into capital expense. In addition to the 125, I think it's a total of 250 that we've been putting in there that comes out of any unspent. What's frustrating me on that point is I understand the rationale of trying to start to boost up our capital, but we have not yet figured out what we're going to do with GMS. On-site Insight, if you've heard, that's the report that was just done to study this. That's talked about multi-millions, as use the superintendent's numbers or words. So to just go ahead and start adding a bunch of warrant articles till we have a full picture of what we have to do for all the capital needs in the school, I think is premature, particularly in the context of the impacts that what's going to happen next year. Unfortunately, I think what you're going to end up having is everybody simply say, no, what is the question? That's where you're going to end up. And I'll finish with one last thing, and I've meant to mention it the other night when I was here. I find it really discouraging that there hasn't been a full discussion of what to do with the school lunch. It's supposed to be self-funding. It's what, I don't know, $500,000 next year?
Was it 150, I believe, is subsidized by the taxpayers currently?
More than that, isn't it?
Well, so it's a so there is money in the budget on the expense side. A good amount of it is offset on the revenue side by the other thing. The difference between the expense in the budget and the revenue side is an infusion of money from the taxpayers of, I believe, 150.
That's correct.
All right. Why wasn't that 150 proposed as a reduction, so that the school board then went ahead and figure out a way to make it self-funding?
So there are going to be budget positions open in March and February. So if we have people on board who are willing to vote that way, then perhaps we can have it happen.
4 positions.
4 positions. The problem is, there's a number of people here, and not everybody's going to agree with that, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your opinion.
I understand. I just want to bring that up. If you're looking for places to save, there's one that wasn't even talked about yet.
It's talked about.
It's been
It was talked about. It got voted down.
We have the highest per lunch rate out of the district, our comparative districts. We already charge more than other schools do for lunch, and we still have a shortfall. It is not uncommon. It is a common occurrence in most other districts around us, and it is not something that I think we can solve in a single discussion. It's going to need to be a global conversation, but our children need to eat.
So I don't want to make public comment, a discussion or a debate.
I
back
won't
and forth
either. I'll stop there, on that note. But I do think there needs to be a realization of the amount of tax increase next year. If all this goes through,
That property will be cheap because there'll be a lot of properties for sale.
ironically, one of the things is we need to fix our schools up to have people come here. Well, no, that's not the case. You just look at real estate now, it lasts 5 days. So we don't
No,
need-
but I'm saying, though,
That may drive people out.
if a good 10% of the properties go up, then all of a sudden we have a lot of supply.
Maybe they'll come in.
Thank you, Mr. Oblinus.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Any other public comments this evening? All right, seeing none, we will move into correspondence. Thank you to Mr. Taylor for pulling this together. Since our meeting last Thursday on the 12th, we had the following correspondence. On December 12th, Julie Darling provided data on electricity usage per request of the Budget Committee. Also on December 12th, Brian O'Connell shared his Budget Committee notes from the 12/12 meeting. And then also on December 12th, Bob Leary shared a summary of the proposed warrant articles. On December 13th, Ron Oblinus requested information that was provided in the Facilities Improvement Committee report, and Dan Mitchell shared information with Mr. Oblinus to access. On December 13th, Chair Sun sent the agenda for the 12/19 meeting. And also on December 13th, Julie Darling provided information about athletic and co-curricular stipends that was requested by the Budget Committee. On December 14th, Matthew Sullivan provided the meeting minutes for the 12/12 meeting. And then on December 18th, Kim Kleiner provided information about proposed settlement with Pennachuck. On December 18th, Chair Sun forwarded information about the town warrant articles that will be presented at the 12/19 meeting. Also on December 18th, Chair Sun forwarded the 12/18 BA report and draft warrant articles. And then one item that was added today on 12/19, Janine Engtel sent an email to the Budget Committee in support of LMS music positions and the benefit of music in our school systems. That is our correspondence since last week. And with that, I'll move. Did everyone have an opportunity to review the minutes from last week? So I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Make a motion.
Motion by
Second.
Mr. Burke, second by Ms. Douglas. Any discussion?
Just one thing, and I'm not sure if the acronym for curriculum director is CIA.
It is, yeah.
It is? What does that stand for?
Curriculum instruction.
Cool title, right?
Didn't know if the law forces were coming in.
All right. We'll roll call since we, Ms. Ames is here. We'll do Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Ms. Ames,
Abstain.
Mr. Leary,
Yes.
Ms. Douglas.
Yes.
I am a yes. Mr. LaPlante, Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Barca,
Abstain.
and Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0-3. All right, so with that, we're going to move into our the primary portion of our agenda for this evening, which are warrant article presentations. We are going to start with the school this evening. Just a reminder for folks watching at home, tonight is an opportunity for warrant articles to be presented, for Budget Committee members to ask questions. There will be no voting tonight. Voting of warrant articles, or the Budget Committee vote on recommendations of warrant articles will take place 3 weeks from tonight on Thursday, January the 9th. So tonight is just a presentation, opportunity to ask questions. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent and the BA, and we will go through the 11 warrant articles that are being presented from the school.
Mind if I?
Yes, absolutely. Maybe. There we go.
Oh, I could get an internet.
Typically sorry, Mr. O'Connell, I should have said this. Typically what I do is I will read the warrant article, just so it's kind of read out loud for people to hear, and then give you all an opportunity to add any context to it, and then questions be asked.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll just point of clarity on the first one. I'll get right to it.
Yeah,
We have two numbers in there just because we were talking into context of one, and then we added the food service and the grant stuff. So that's what
Right.
the second number is. That's what would actually appear. But for conversational purposes, I wanted to make sure people saw both numbers.
Second number includes food service and grants, right?
Yes, which is what actually shows up on the ballot in March. So.
Okay. All right, so Article 1, shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth in the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by the vote at the first session for the purposes set forth herein, totaling $27,359,039. And then that number that includes the food service and the grants is $28,704,328. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $27,077,717, including food service and grants. The default is $28,403,210, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Litchfield School District or by law, or the school board may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 401310 and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Majority vote required. So with that, I'll let you, I don't know if there's any additional context you want to add to it, if there's any discussion or questions from the budget committee around that one.
Yeah, I mean, the first number, the one we've talked about a bunch at these numbers. So we finished off our default budget, utilized the same formulas that, Doug Totten's been using the past couple of years. Ran it through a couple different BAs to make sure, it's our first time doing it, that we were correct in everything we were doing, including Doug. He's most familiar with it. They said, good. There's a couple small things they tweaked us here and there about. So that's the new number that's on there, the default budget. And besides that, answer any
Will
questions.
we get a copy of how you calculated the default
Yeah, I
budget?
can give you a copy if you want.
That'd be great.
And just for this group's context and anyone watching at home, the difference between the proposed operating and the default is $281,322.
That's about what your difference was last year. I mean, as we've gone through the process, we haven't changed much from last year. I mean, we reduced, 10 para positions that I think was a reduction that needed to be happened. They were vacant in that capacity, but otherwise we didn't make radical changes in our proposed budget. We are new. When we have to get this done in October, we are 2 months into the school year. Not gonna tear everything up on the first go around, so it's pretty consistent to what our current operating budget is. So.
Just a question I have, and this I guess applies for all the warrant articles. Ms. Ames, do you know when the school board's planning on voting on these?
That's a great question. I believe we are hoping to do so the first meeting in January,
So we
And-
have
Be before our January
which
9th
will
meeting?
be before yours.
And when
Yeah.
we see them again, they'll have the tax rate impact?
Yes.
Do you have a rough estimate as to what we're looking at?
This one we don't, because we're working on the revenues still. We want to make sure we're certain when we say that number. We have rough ones for the rest of them because they're much easier to calculate because they're not calculating in any of the revenues. So we're expecting to finish that in the next few days. So.
When you finish both of those, could you share that in the default budget calculations, please?
Definitely.
Any other questions on Article 1 this evening?
What's the breakdown of the second numbers that you have there, the 28,704 and 28,403? How much of that is the food service and how much of that is grants?
Food service is about $770,000, so it's about a $10,000 increase from what the budget is this year for food service in terms of that Fund 21 account. The grant is consistent, $575,000. So
Thank you.
What was the grant number again?
$575,000. And we have to raise that money first, and then as we get the grants, that's what offsets it.
Any other questions on Article 1 this evening? Okay. Article 2, Shall the Litchfield School District vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Litchfield School District and the Litchfield Support Staff Association, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits at the current staffing level over those paid in the prior fiscal year. Year 2025-2026, the estimated increase is $206,530. Year 2026-2027, the estimated increase is $201,100. And then year 2027-2028, the estimated increase is $225,093. And further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $206,530 for fiscal year 2026, such sum representing the additional costs attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at current staffing levels. Majority vote required. The estimated tax impact is 17 cents. Turn it back to you.
Yep, so this is our LSSA agreement that we have negotiated with them for this past fall. Came to a 3-year agreement, excuse me. Here, we were happy with where we ended up from our perspective, administration, and the board perspective. Just to refresh your memory, from the previous years, last year's warrant article, the estimated increase from that LSSA contract that was agreed was $279,000-ish, and a little bit over that, $103. So we're coming here at 206 in our next contract negotiation. We feel positive about that from where we are from a fiscal standpoint. This is our support staff. We want to make sure we stay competitive with our neighbors when we talk about hiring for these positions. These include positions such as paraprofessionals, our maintenance custodial workers, food service workers. They all have different slight pay scales and pay rates depending on their specific positions. We're slowly chipping away at hiring these positions, and I think it's because we're becoming competitive. We're seeing that we're taking people slowly from other districts, and particularly in the area of custodial. We seem to be increasing and filling our staff out nicely there. We just became fully staffed with our food service people this last week. And I think that is due credit because we are being competitive. Again, with that custodial, at least 2 of the people we've gotten were working in the same position in other districts and have come to work for us. So I think this is positive.
So what type of raises on average are we looking at here?
Yeah, it's either 3.75 or 4%, depending on where they were. So.
And then, but overall, in the past several years, it's been a substantial raise.
Yeah,
There was an
I would imagine
out of
that.
That was
contract.
the 279K,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
I mean, that was pretty standard across every school district, everywhere. Was
So we opted to reopen a contract that was agreed to. So I think, so I think this will be interesting to see how this one goes, because we already amended the contract once recently. We see the impact coming. It'll be interesting to see how it shakes out.
I mean, a lot of these people work in our communities. I think it's
Sure.
important to support them.
Any other questions on Article 2 this evening?
Do we have a breakdown of the changes in any of like the healthcare or any other things that are associated with this? So have there been any changes in the contributions or anything?
There
I think
wasn't,
we-
there
yeah,
was
kept
not
it the same.
healthcare.
Yeah.
There was minor, I think the cell phone expense is the
There's
one
a
that
some
comes to mind.
very small for
Very
3
small,
staff
but
and-
It's salary.
Yeah.
is-
Right, so can I get a breakdown of the changes then, as a result of this contract, proposed contract?
The breakdown between salary
Yeah,
and
what-
In the
benefit?
past, we used to get like a summary sheet of what's changed in the proposed contract.
Okay.
We just get a copy of the contract itself.
Yeah,
That might be easier.
Yeah.
Is that fine?
yeah, whatever. I prefer that, but we used to, when we asked for that, we'd get a summary sheet.
No,
Like, oh, all right, I'll go back to the original contract and lay them side by side, figure it out myself.
I think the contract would be easier.
That's fine, that's absolutely.
I don't have an issue with that, I don't think. I mean, I think we've provided it in years past.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
there's no
Okay.
reason not to.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on Article 2 this evening? Okay.
What was the
Go ahead.
estimated impact on that one?
17.
17 cents.
Yeah.
Oh, good lord. This-
Article 3 does not have a tax impact, so we will
Okay.
not vote on it in 3 weeks, but it is, shall the Litchfield School District, if Article 2 is defeated, authorize the Litchfield School Board to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 2 cost items only, majority vote required.
I appreciate that we're seeing these more often.
Should always be there.
No, I don't disagree with you, but the one time we opted not to, we ended up in court. So I appreciate that
They
this
should be
is
there.
on.
Article 4, shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $116,011 for the purpose of funding the salary and benefit cost for a full-time district-wide network administrator position to manage the network, configure, oversee data security, and network updates for the district. Majority vote required. Estimated tax impact is 9 cents. Turn it
Yep,
back.
this is a position we've talked about at various presentations. Network administrator, obviously a lot of stuff involving technology, but the thing that I see most valuable with this is data security. We're seeing an influx, we've seen this in our neighbors, both in Hudson and Nashua, as they experience data security issues that cost their respective districts and towns millions and millions of dollars. So some additional support here I think is critical. We have a small technology team here in our district. We do not have someone who's dedicated to this type of work right now. It falls on the director of technology. It's one of the many things he's doing. So I think this, we're putting it out there to see if this is something that people will support. So
Questions on Article 4? My question would be, and I've heard, Mr. O'Connell, I've heard you talk about this even back when we were with the fire stations, about, cybersecurity threats, other school districts. My concern is the average voter looks at this and I don't know if they fully understand what this position is going to do.
Yeah,
and so
I
I
know.
wonder, my wondering is, how do you best convey the importance of this position, the value that it provides, and the potential threats, the right word, that could exist without this position?
I think that's what we have to do. If we're putting this on the ballot, our job as a district is to educate our voters on what this position really does, because I think it is challenging for people to know what is a network administrator, right? And how we are vulnerable when it comes to this data security. And I keep harping on the data security because in my role, that's what I'm most fearful of, is something that compromises all of our data, whether it's our student data or financial data or any and all of it. But it's also managing as it is a network administrator, managing our internet and our network and stuff, and making sure that's more efficient. So when we have tools like Chromebooks and we're trying to use all these online resources, we can do it in a more efficient manner because our network is going at the right speed. Stuff is updated in a timely manner, and we're not dragging our feet on some of these things. But yes, I think a big responsibility for us is selling people on what this is. It's different when you say, the next one's an athletic trainer. I think people have an idea what an athletic trainer does, right? I don't think the general public has an idea of what a network administrator does.
Are you suggesting, Mr. Sun, that perhaps the word cybersecurity somehow be in the title in some way, shape, or form for the position in order to provide at least that extra layer of knowledge to the voters? I mean, again, the hope is that we can educate people through the voter guide and through conversations. But I'm asking.
I agree with you on the latter part. I think if I were writing this warrant article and I were supporting it, cybersecurity has been something I've heard the superintendent talk a lot about. I would find a way to weave that into this language, because I think ultimately that's probably a word or words that more resonates with people than talking about network updates, configure, etc.
I think that's a fair point. I think that's certainly something for the board to talk about, for us to talk about.
I think we want to be honest on the title of the position. Like, this
Right,
is what
correct.
the position is
Yeah, it doesn't
called.
change the.
Yeah.
I agree with you. It doesn't
But-
change the name of the position itself, but it's a big crux of the responsibility.
I might actually argue change the name of the position, to like a system administrator, because I don't know what he's planning to have him do, but I have to believe actually managing the network is going to be a relatively small piece of his job, and it's going to be managing other infrastructure and
Yeah.
systems and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
We settled on that job title because
Okay.
that's what a lot of their districts have in this role, is they're called a network administrator, we can certainly play around with it. That's why we settled with this, because you can look at other school districts that have this position, and this is what it's called,
Was there any examination into managed service providers that could do this instead?
we have-
The problem with one person is you're limited to their knowledge, their ability, and their time.
Yeah.
Versus a managed service provider, then at that point you get much more extensive. If cybersecurity is your biggest concern, then at that point, dispersing that risk over many people and an organization that can leverage many different threat deterrents
Yeah.
and mitigation techniques is probably a lot better of a spend than the money for one person. And most of the stuff as far as network administration, with the exception of the fact that if something dies and you gotta put hands and
Do it
eyes on
once,
it, You can do it all virtually. I just get concerned that this spend here is not gonna get you the type of protection that you want.
Yeah, and you know, this is when we were a team, we were playing the budget and stuff and working with Chris on what he thought made the most sense in terms of our financials, in terms of the team, in terms of everything. This is what his suggestion was, you know. So this is what we're going with right now, you know, and this need is not gonna go away. You know, if this doesn't get passed in March, we're gonna go back to the drawing board and this is gonna still exist, right?
Yeah.
And like, we need to solve it in some way. That could be a return of this a year from now. You know, it could be looking at different options and finding out. Chris didn't think that was the best decision right now, but that doesn't mean, you know, if, you know, this gets turned down, then that's a different discussion, right? You know, so you go from there, so.
Has there been talk about sharing responsibilities across the school and the town for
That's not
this
a bad
position?
idea either.
No, I have not asked him about that, so.
I mean, I assume we don't have one on the town, right?
I mean, John.
All right, well, yeah, my position on that one still hasn't changed in 10 years. So, we don't have an independent, outside well, I guess it doesn't matter if it's we're hiring one person. I was of the position, the opinion when that whole situation occurred, that we should have outsourced for the very reason that if he's on vacation, you have someone accessible. He goes down because he's sick, somebody's accessible. So the idea of putting all our eggs in the basket of one employee makes me nervous. I also think it's gonna be a hard sell given the amount that we're being asked to consider this year.
In terms of the town stuff, I mean, I don't wanna speak for Kim right there, but, you know, and I actually don't know what John's actual title is, other than like tech guy who does a lot of awesome stuff. And like, he helps us at the school. So I think there is just that natural kind of like relationship where we're gonna work with each other. Like, John comes to our schools, he fixes radios for us, he does these things. If we were fortunate to have this position voted in, and they had a need, we would certainly be willing to kind of share resources in that way and stuff like that, so.
I think the other piece of it is too, and it was explained in a few slides, if you recall from a budget presentation last year, we do have one of the smallest IT departments compared to other districts of our size. And so when we are, cybersecurity, I think the superintendent has said is the thing that makes him lose the most sleep at night, that type of threat.
Well, one.
But there
There's
will,
lots.
yeah, okay, maybe there might be many things. But there is gonna be a lot more to this job responsibility than just that one piece.
No, absolutely, but again, as a holistic
Yep.
oversight of this, and not to get, because we'll vote on it at some point.
Right.
The reality is, at some point, we need to start picking what our favorites are, what are our priorities. Because if this is our number one thing, then maybe there's things in the budgets now that we need to reconsider how we fund. Because we keep going to the taxpayers as if there's a money tree somewhere in town, and I would love to know where that is. But the reality is, there's only so much water in that well, and we are tapping it dry. So it'll come in, like, I understand your position and your concern. Eventually, I'm gonna probably ask you, of all your warrant articles, which are the top 3 you feel you can't live without?
Yeah, I would expect that, but, you know, this is, I'll say a quirk of this town, is that you have to put every position on his warrant, and you can't get creative in like how you get this stuff done in your own budget, right?
No,
Like,
I think that's fantastic.
I also think it handcuffs you sometimes,
And that's
right?
the whole
Like,
point.
and,
Supposed to.
but, yeah, I just think like you have savings that you don't get sometimes because you're doing it in this manner. That's unfortunate.
I think the challenge with this one is, to Carrie's point, like, we're trying to take into consideration the overall tax impact and tax burden. A quick Google research of districts just in New Hampshire in the last couple of years, and the dollars lost due to cybersecurity is way more than this amount. And so trying to balance those two things out is difficult, because you're rolling the dice and saying, we're doing this in case this does happen. The odds of it happening aren't high, but if it does, then we could be in trouble. So that's the tough spot to be in on this.
Like I said, no matter how this shakes out, the need's not going away. So if it doesn't work out this year, we're gonna be back here a year from now. I'm gonna have something related to the data security again. If it doesn't work out 2 years from now, 3 years from now, I'll be back here again. Hopefully I still have a job, and talking about data security, so on and so forth.
Any other questions on Article 4 this evening?
I will commend you for putting it in a warrant article.
Yeah.
That's always been one of my big beefs, is that any new positions, town or school, should be warrant article.
Yeah, I mean, we want to be cooperative. That's the style and that's the format here that we want to play by the rules. Like, we're not trying to do anything shady, but, it is sometimes a challenge. And we'll talk about the athletic trainer. It feels weird. Can we jump to that one? Because that's the context that it feels a little weird in.
Let me go ahead and read it real
Yeah.
quick. Article 5. Shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $48,605? Thank you, Mr. Taylor. For the purpose of funding the salary and benefit costs for a part-time district-wide athletic trainer position to provide athletic training services to student athletes, as well as to provide support to the athletic director as needed. Majority vote required. Estimated tax impact is 4 cents.
So we have a contract in the budget for $40,000 for an athletic trainer, which is roughly about 20 hours a week. A little more or less depending on where we are in an athletic season, but about 20 hours a week. This is proposed for our own person in-house. As we mentioned before, we would return that money for that contract at the end of the next year if this was to be approved. It is an increase of about a little over $8,000, but this is based on more of a 30-hour work week and more bang for our buck out of this person. And we could utilize them a little bit beyond just the athletic training needs. We would obviously have those needs, but even simple things like helping us cover classes, just helping with management around the building, doing some of those small things that we always just need help with would be great. So we're here, we're committed to returning that $40,000 if this was to be approved. This is where I get a little weird. I wish I could just do that math for you
Yeah,
in
we
the
tried that
budget.
last year on the town side,
Yeah.
and the state said no.
Yeah, so,
And,
but
I
here we
mean,
are.
one of the things I think you stated with this one too was the company that we contract with has
Yeah.
clearly stated that this cost is going to get to
Continue to go up.
60
Yeah,
by 2030. Is that right?
yes, that is correct.
See, my concern is when we look at how much we're funding, why is this the responsibility of the taxpayers and not the responsibility of the parents of the athletes themselves? That's where my sticking point is. Like, why should, if you're a robotics kid, you're not gonna see this guy.
Well,
So,
you could, right? And I'm gonna speak to other places I've been. Yes, as an athletic trainer, but I can speak of, at my old school, we had a kid fall off the stage when they were rehearsing for their play. The athletic trainer was our medical person on site after hours to deal with that injury, right? So that person allows us to keep the safety and our welfare of kids beyond the school day, right? Athletics is the main place where kids are gonna get hurt outside of the school day, certainly. But when there are instances of other medical needs that happen outside the school day, we have someone there to help with that. And I think that's a huge huge asset to a school district.
I hear what you're saying. I stand by my original statement.
And that's the benefit of having someone in house versus a contracted person, right? The likelihood of someone who's contracted to just be there for football, of them going in and helping someone that got hurt in the auditorium, is probably less than someone that's a employee of the school district.
Yeah, you have to bank your contract person's going to look the other way and help you in a situation like that, right? They're not contractually bound to do that, like that athletic trainer when we're going through a provider like that. Our own employee, we can say, yes, you are going to deal with this type of injury, right? Now, in my past experiences, people look out for kids, right? Like, I'm not saying like the trainers we contract out with and the service
I wasn't
providers.
saying
That,
that, yeah.
yeah, they're not going to just turn the other way. But they are taking on some liability themselves when they're dealing with something like that. That's not outside of the athletic realm.
I personally think this one is, I think, one of the easier articles you have in there. And I think if you provide in the voter guide the explanation of projected contract costs, current cost in the budget, and the school board's commitment to return that if this is approved, I think most people will support this one because it actually, in the long run, saves money, provides more services, and more flexibility.
If I can just piggyback on that, because that's basically what I was going to say. 'Cause you said earlier, yeah, this one is an easy one to understand. It's really not, because you just want to make certain you educate in the voter guide that you're already spending money for this. Just what you said, and it's going to continue to increase. But we already have this position, we're just outsourcing.
Yeah.
Rather than bringing it in-house and then for more hours.
Yeah, I agree. The explanation in the voter guide, I think, is going to be important for this one.
And the other piece too, like you said, he's there for football. He is there for football, but at the same time football's going on. You got girls soccer, boys soccer, and I'm not sure if cross country at the same time. So he's there. You watch him he's going from field to field in his little tractor.
Any
Still
other
doesn't change my opinion.
any other questions on Article 5 this evening?
I don't think you make the parents or the athletes pay for this position. As much as I usually agree with
well-
Kerry, I don't on this one.
Well, it comes down to, if we're gonna pay, we can't pay for everything for everybody. So if we're gonna fund food, do we have to sacrifice
But-
somewhere in athletics?
but
Like,
to me-
we can't keep going. We
But-
can't keep increasing the
But to me,
rate.
that's like saying make the parents of the kids that need paras pay for the para
I
positions.
don't think so.
It is, it's the
No,
same
it's
thing.
not. It is absolutely not the
I'm
same.
sure it is.
Any other
One's federally
questions?
required, one's not.
Any other questions on Article 5 this evening? All right, Article 6. Shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $500,000 to be added to the Building Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund established in 2005 for the purpose of funding school capital improvements, building maintenance, and repairs in the Litchfield School District. Majority vote required. Estimated tax impact is 41 cents.
This is a big, yeah, this is a big one. Like, and you, in my opinion, you know, you need to start putting away significant money for your buildings.
Why
Right.
500,000 though?
It's a good question. So the math on the 500,000 is we have our on-site insight report, and we're going to talk about Campbell. This is not to discount GMS. I just want to
Right.
make that clear.
Even the
But-
new school is still now at the point where major systems need to be
Correct. It's
addressed.
25 years old. You know, life expectancy of a roof is between 25 and 30 years, right? On-site insight confirms that in their report. And they think we could start replacing it now. We're obviously not going to replace the roof right now.
I guess the
like
question would
this.
be, what is the state? I'd have to look at in more detail. I mean, even though the life is that, doesn't mean that it can't last longer or
Okay.
properly maintained. If we don't bring snow blowers up to the roof, it might actually last longer.
But we do want to properly plan for whenever the event is that we need to replace that
Yeah.
roof. And if the expected lifespan is 25 to 30 years, we should start planning to replace it in that lifespan. And if
Mm-hmm. Right.
we don't in the year 30, great.
Right.
But if we do need to replace it sooner, it'd be nice to have money at
Right.
our fingertips. So if you're going to replace the roof, you're going to do other things at the same time as you're replacing the roof, right? Look at HVAC work, maybe some electrical work, so on and so forth. So using the on-site report as kind of the guide, if we were to do it in 2026, they estimate the cost of what you should do all that time at about $2.1 million. They have about a 3% increase kicker, you go out. So if you project this out to 4 or 5 years, you know, about 2030, you're looking at about round numbers, $2.5 million, right? So if we start putting away $500,000 for the next 5 years, we then are sitting on $2.5 million. And we could theoretically then have a warrant article that raises our, hopefully at that point, 5th year in a row, $500,000. Next warrant article, let's take that money out and do the necessary repair and work to the roof and
Right.
everything else at CHS.
In principle, I agree with you. I love the idea. The problem is the spending increase is going to crowd out a lot of these really good ideas. And I'm really concerned that while this is philosophically, pragmatically, the right decision, the tax increase that we're already looking at is huge.
But there is no right time to start this work.
So that's where the
Right.
trade-offs have to be made, though, right? If we're gonna increase here, and we know this is coming here, maybe this increase can't be so high.
So at some point, I would advocate you gotta start putting this money away.
I don't disagree. I just think this is a
And
bad year to be putting it
You're
forward.
looking at next year,
LEA.
probably an LEA contract, hopefully an LEA contract, something with GMS, whatever that is, right? Which is not gonna be able to utilize this fund. You're probably gonna have to go out to some sort of bond to get whatever you're headed towards there, whether it's repairs or renovation or new building, whatever the case may be. You know, that's not gonna be able to withdraw from these funds because there's more immediate need. But you can't let Campbell fall by the wayside as you're dealing with all the stuff at Griffin.
And like I said, I agree with you in principle. My concern is the overall impact that we're looking at, we're gonna see a lot of no's.
That may be, but then you could potentially be in the same place in Campbell that you are with GMS and down the road.
I don't disagree, but that's why I think we need to make.
Kerry, you've said the same thing for 5 years. When is the right time then?
Well, I've
out of
been
curiosity.
trying to reduce the budget to help make you time for it, but nobody wants to do that. So when you keep saying yes to the increases, that's what happened with the GMS
The voters
maintenance.
are saying yes to the increases,
Sure,
not
well-
us.
Okay,
Other questions on Article 6
then
this
it'll be an
evening?
interesting election.
You asked what, Kerry, you asked what, 3. Obviously, operating budget I would like to pass. That would be my number 1.
Yeah, I'm
Like,
not voting for that
article.
one, but okay.
But this is in my top 3. I think this is the sound.
Does it have to be 500,000?
I would love for it to be more. If anyone
I
wants to throw a
know.
higher number out there.
But I think what I heard you say was getting to that 30 years with the
Yes.
roof.
With the
and
money in the
And
account.
the anticipated cost, I mean, you know, Carrie, I hear what you're saying, and I agree with the numbers associated with it are big. I also think I've heard you say for 5 years, like, let's plan out and let's put it away.
I also
I
didn't
know.
think we'd be looking at a massive $3 million revenue swing.
I hear you. I think this is a tough one from the sense of there's foresight, there's planning, there's logic that
I
supports
love the
this.
idea. I'm not discounting
It's
that.
balancing that out with everything else that I think, to Carrie's point, is going to be hard for the voters to do. I think, again, this goes back to the detail that's going to be provided in the voter guide is going to help sell or not sell this one. I believe
And
that.
it's been more than 5 years, Gary.
I've been advocating for a long-term
Oh,
plan.
I know.
But again, did you see a $3 million revenue swing coming for this budget? I didn't.
Any other questions or comments on Article 6 this evening? All right, real quick, I should have done this before we started. I'm going to pause where we are. Mr. Taylor had to leave for a work trip. He has joined us via the phone, so I need to entertain a motion for remote participation this evening. Motion by Mr. Burke, second by Mr. O'Leary. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries 8-0-0. Scott, are you able to hear us?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
And can you just state where you are, please, for the record?
Yep, I'm in the car heading to Logan Airport.
Thank you, sir. Safe travels. All right.
I have a quick question on that one.
Yes.
I guess there's a way to word it where if there's a fund balance, a lot of it comes out of fund balance. I know you add more down below out of fund balance, but I guess there's a way to.
I think it's a good question. We elected not to do that with this warrant article, with the idea that if this was approved this year, this would become a recurring warrant article.
I
And then
don't
while there's a
disagree with that.
significant tax, I don't want to minimize
No,
the
I
tax impact.
actually agree with that philosophy that you want to get it in there and get people, it's like the highway road grants and what we do on the roads on the town side.
Right.
Because realistically, it should be an ongoing thing.
Right.
Whether it should be 500, I don't know, but there should be something there.
Yeah, so if we can get it passed without using end of the year and then have this same, and if you don't change the dollar amount, then the tax impact is the same every year.
Yeah.
So,
Anything else on Article 6 this evening? All right. Article 7. Shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,253 to be added to the Employee Benefits Reserve Fund established in 2022 for the purpose of funding the payment of negotiated employee benefits, including but not limited to health insurance reimbursements, changes in coverage or policies chosen by employees, severance benefits, and such other benefits as are from time to time negotiated and become contractual obligations of the district. This sum to come from the June 30 fund balance available for transfer on July 1 of this year, with no additional amount to be raised from taxation. This amount is consistent with the amount raised for severance payments that were not paid out in fiscal year 2024 and therefore will be paid out in subsequent years. Majority vote required. Estimated tax impact is $0.00.
Thank you.
O'Connell?
for doing
yeah,
this.
so this is pretty straightforward. It's not, it's complicated, but it's actually a pretty simple, straightforward idea. Rather than raise the money every single year, with the way that we do the retirements here, is that a teacher just has to say it once and then they don't have to necessarily retire at the end of that school year. Then we only raise that money once from taxation, and then when they first tell us they're thinking about retirement, we put that away in the reserve fund. We had no one new this year tell us that they're potentially retiring. We had 2 teachers tell us that they were thinking about it, but we have already raised that money and put it away in the reserve fund. So this is just because they stayed an additional year, the small amount of money that their severance goes up because they stayed an additional year. And it comes out end of the year balance, and it's good practice. So I think this was your suggestion, the budget committee. This is great practice, and obviously we're continuing it. So
I appreciate it.
Fairly straightforward. Any additional questions or comments on Article 7? Okay, Article 8. Shall the Litchfield School District vote to establish a solar payoff expendable trust fund under the provisions of RSA 198-20C5 for the purpose of setting aside funds to be utilized to pay off the cost of the solar equipment at Litchfield Middle School at the end of the 6-year agreement, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be placed in the fund. This sum is to come from the June 30 fund balance available for transfer on July 1 of this year, with no additional amount to be raised from taxation. Majority vote required. Estimated tax impact $0.00.
How many years are left on the 6-year agreement?
hasn't started.
Hasn't started yet.
Started yet because
Really? I
they
thought-
haven't.
It's not
Has to be
it's
turned.
not live yet.
Not live.
So because it hasn't been fully connected and it's not
It's connected now. It's not turned on.
It's not turned on, yes.
That was, I heard you all discuss that at one of your last meetings, and that was a provision of the agreement that did not kick in until it was connected, and I'm drawing a blank on the language that was used, but ownership was transferred, or whatever the
Right.
language was.
Yeah, it's active. The system itself is active and going. And so we've been able to, that supplemental contract, we are still paying the amount that's due, but the 6-year has not started on that.
And what is the payoff amount?
It's about 600,000, which is why it's 100,000.
Wait, so it's connected, so like during the day, is it actually working?
No, it's not turned on.
It's just the
They're all connected together, that's
the
it.
wires from,
Yeah.
the wire, I think, I don't know, I'm not a solar expert. The wires from the solar panels are coming through the walls now, and they're connecting to the power stuff that's in the building, and they're talking to each other and stuff. So the hope, knock on wood, and because we got to do some of this work when no one's in the building, right? Is that there's going to be more work done over the holiday break here in the next couple of weeks, and that hopefully in January we can do the figurative flip the switch, and then once that flip switches, the 6 years could kick in. We're gonna not to get too in the weeds with some of this stuff. We're gonna check with our legal on some things because this has obviously been delayed, and we'd like to clarify a couple of things that I think could be more beneficial to the district in the long run. So I won't get into too much of that, but if this was to turn on in January, it would be wise for us to start putting that money away now. So this is warrant article is the creation of a fund specifically to pay off the solar if we elected to do that at the end of that 6-year agreement.
Well, this is reoccurring. Why wouldn't you do the same thing as you do with the $500,000?
We discussed that at the board level, and we thought this might be easier for people to stomach if it came out of our end of the year, so it'd be a recurring kind of end of the year one.
And it's not a
moving
forever
forward.
thing. It's 6
Not
years.
a forever thing, right.
It's not, but it's reoccurring.
Be recurring for 6
Need it.
years. And with the dollar amount, 100,000, we felt a little more comfortable that would be available for us at the end of the year. The 500,000, we should not have $500,000 to return back this year if we're doing things properly from a financial standpoint. We felt this was best served in that kind of end of the year fund.
I think this is the right approach for this. Again, broken record. I think the detail you provide in the voter guide explaining that that 6 years has not begun yet, because I think there are going to be people thinking
I thought it already
we're
started.
already behind the 8 ball
Yeah.
on this. I think that will be important.
Yeah, it's been something that's been talked about with the capital improvement plan. This is a good idea to have this planned out.
Additional questions or comments on Article 8 this evening?
No, I'm glad to see it, because if it wasn't there, I was gonna ask for it. So, because I've been asking for this since we signed this first initial contract.
You do listen.
Article
I'm not gonna blame you here, it was your predecessor.
Article 9, shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate up to a sum of $200,000 to be added to the Special Education Capital Reserve Fund established in 2004 for the purpose of educating disabled students. This sum to come from the June 30 fund balance available for transfer on July 1 of this year with no additional amount to be raised from taxation. Majority vote required, estimated tax impact $0.00. Mr. O'Connell?
All right, so this is a little more complicated than what it reads on the surface here. So our end goal, we have about $160,000 in this particular reserve fund right now. And our goal is to get that closer to $200,000, which is where that $200,000 number comes from right here. There is, I won't say a 0% chance, let's just say 50-50 right now. We're about halfway through the school year, that we'll have to access this reserve fund for this current school year to account for some of the special ed funding that costs that we have associated with this school year. We had a student move in beginning of the school year who was already out of district place when they arrived to us. We continue that out of district placement, significant costs there that we obviously didn't budget for. We are fortunate that the shortage from special ed aid from the state was only 50,000-ish for us. That could have been a lot worse for us as a district, but that's also $50,000 we got to come up with now, right? That we're not going to have for this year. So there's a chance we're going to have to access that reserve fund. We're kind of, in the event I'm gonna try to explain this, if it makes sense to me. In the hypothetical, we were to pull all 160 of that out right now, right? And say we did not need to spend any of it because we were able to get through the year, careful spending, whatever. Then that comes into our end of the year balance and we can just return it right back into this account, if that makes sense.
Why would you take all 160 at this?
I'm just using it as a round, like, figure, right, hypothetical. Like, I don't know if that's what we would actually do. We would take the money that we would need. But in a worst-case scenario, let's say we were projecting out that way, things took a drastic turn and we didn't end up needing to spend that money. Maybe a kid moves out, right? You know, something like that, and all of a sudden we're not spending that money. Then that enters our end-of-the-year fund and it goes right back into this account. So really what the ask is 40,000, if that makes sense.
So what if you don't take 160? What if you take 40,000?
Then we would be looking to put in 160 from our end of year funds there to get to that
can't.
$200,000 amount, because we can go up to
We
200.
said
Oh.
up
Oh,
to.
it's just up to some, okay, I missed the up to.
The
But
end
is that
game,
how it works legally? Like legally, if you have, say, 400,000 and you fund the first one of 100, do you get to opt to not go to 200,000? Can you stop? Because my understanding, the up to protects you in the event that you don't have, say, 300,000.
yeah, and we're trying to get some clarity from our legal on that, because this is what we would like to try to do, is not have to commit it.
They place them?
Well, so yes, but so what they say is like, say you have 150,000. Well, the first one says up to 100,000, so that 100,000 got filled first.
Yeah.
So up to, so 50,000 that's left would still come up to the 200. But what if you have 400,000? Can you not fill it to 200?
So would it need to say up to 50,000, but not to exceed 200,000 or something?
No, I don't know that this wording allows for what
There's
you're hoping.
percentage wording in there, right, that of your reserve, of your end of the year funds, you're gonna tap into, say, you had this in your warrant articles last year. We haven't put it in yet, because we're
Right,
looking for some
but no, my
clarity.
concern is, so one, you're proposing, we could take 160, which, okay, then you don't use it, then it's 40. But if you only feel you need 40, are you adding another 200, so essentially 160?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Then
So I
we
just
would not
don't know that the language here
Yeah.
does what you're hoping it does.
I don't disagree with you, hence why we're checking with
Yeah,
legal.
okay.
We understand the spirit of the
The
warrant.
spirit of it is we're
You
trying to
need
get to
clarify
200.
the
Yeah.
wording.
So we could, we put it out to legal today after we met with the board last night, and we're waiting to hear back from them on if this is okay with that. And our goal, though, the bigger picture goal, is to end up with $200,000 in the
Right.
special ed reserve fund.
And that's because, and I believe I've heard you say this, so I just want to reiterate this. You anticipate with the rising costs to service an out-of-district placement, that $200,000 best represents one unanticipated student moving in next year.
Correct. And that may not even be enough to cover that, depending on what that specific individual hypothetical kid needs were. In the situation we're dealing with right now, if we were completely tapped, then yes, this would have been enough money to cover in that specific situation we're dealing with right now. But, there are certainly situations where the expense for now district placement for a student is closer to $500,000, right?
And now that the state's
those are
not
rare.
funding as much, that's even more on our
Correct,
books.
so you need to put more in your reserve fund. We're not doing this, but there are districts out there that are accessing their special ed reserve fund to offset the lack of money they got back from the state this year. I think we're fortunate that we don't need to do that. We can essentially find that 50,000 short in other avenues in special ed, so.
I've heard districts having to do that. It's unfortunate. Any other questions, comments on Article 9? All right, two more to go for the school this evening. Article 10, shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate up to a sum of $125,000 to be added to the Capital Improvements Expendable Trust Fund established in 2020 for the purpose of funding the study, planning, and cost of new construction or renovation of existing facilities in the Litchfield School District. This sum to come from the June 30 fund balance available for transfer on July 1 of this year with no additional amount to be raised from taxation. This amount is consistent with the capital plan adopted by the town of Litchfield in September 2020. Majority vote required. Estimated tax impact $0, 0 cents. Mr. O'Connell.
So this is in line with a warrant article you've had for a number, it looks like a number of years at this point, where you have end of the year funds, and then up to $125,000 you put into the Capital Improvements Expenditure Trust Fund. So keeping that going.
Questions on Article 10?
How much is in there now, do you know?
Julie can look it up. top of my head, I'm gonna go 300 something, but, that is a wild guess, cause I'm not,
I think you're right.
yeah.
Other questions on
What do
Article?
you think is the ideal amount to have in this account?
I don't know, to be honest, because I don't know what we're doing with GMS yet, right? Like, so one of the things you could use for this account for is, say you wanted to do kind of a design build type of model and you wanted to get some plans in place first, right? You could access this trust fund to do that, and then that would cost you whatever that would be, right? Depending on how long all that takes out, depending on the specific, Griffin project you settle on, you might be able to pull more money out of that to offset whatever that project is there, right? So, if we were starting from scratch 50 years ago, I would say, yeah, let's get $20 million in there and then build a new school when that gets to that point. None of us are going to be around 50 years from now to deal with that. So, I think we chip away at it knowing that we have a purpose for it, which is Griffin, right? But what that exact plan is, we're unsure, so let's stay consistent with the dollar amount we've been putting in there.
And it's currently 316,000.
I mean, at some point, you would just put it towards warrant, and then the cost would be built into the warrant article. So you would really only need enough funding to get you to warrant.
Yeah, I mean, at that avenue, you have that money, and then maybe you're gonna go in a different direction. Again, there's building needs throughout the
But
district.
this is for design.
I know it is, but like, you could then close accounts, move money, do things down the road if need be, so. I don't think the money's gonna go to waste.
No, I don't like putting money in without understanding how much, what's my target.
Yeah.
So this would not be a high, if I had to pick my top three, this would not be one of them.
I don't disagree with that, if we're picking top threes.
No.
I mean, I personally would love if all 11 passed, that would be great.
Any other questions on Article 10 this evening? All right, lastly, we have Article 11. Shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate up to a sum of $135,000 to be added to the Building Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund established in 2005 for the purpose of funding school capital improvements, building maintenance, and repairs in the Litchfield School District. This sum to come from the June 30 fund balance available for transfer on July 1 of this year with no additional amount to be raised from taxation. Majority vote required. Estimated tax impact $0, 0 cents.
So question, we go back a couple of them. Were we creating a new fund for 500?
For the solar, we were, yes.
No, the 500,000.
No, that's this.
But that's
This
when
is
you
our backup.
appropriate, this is end of the year funds.
This is a
So you actually
backup.
want to put 635,000 towards capital improvements?
Well, we're getting some clarity about this, because we discussed this at the board last night. What if Article, I think it's 6, fails, right? Like, should we have some sort of, safety net there? That need is not going away. We need to continue to stack money away in that account. And this comes to us, again, voter guy, educating people and understanding what this is, right? We need clarity on whether we can have 2 warrant articles connected to the same fund on our list
Oh,
of
so they are
articles here.
funding the same fund?
It is, yeah.
Fund.
Yeah.
So we talked about whether that was possible, and again, we're getting clarity on that, because this is something we discussed last night at the board meeting. So if that's not something we can do, then this would be the one we would likely remove. I can't commit to that 100%. I'd have to ask the board what they would ultimately want to do. But when we were talking about articles last night, knowing we had this presentation tonight, we did want to include something like this in the language in the event it is something we can do.
What's the current dollar amount in this account, Julie?
366,000.
So, but if both pass, you'd have almost $1 million.
This would, yeah, which is, again, not gonna go to waste, but this is the last of the warrant articles. So as we start to fill in these, you
Right,
start
but the
with 7.
500,000 is appropriate.
No, yeah, so you got your 500 over here, but then as we start to use end of the year funds, as we stack through these 7,
Right.
8, 9, 10, 11, we put this one on the bottom.
We might
Because
not
we
get
wanna
to
start chipping away at those other ones.
I thought that a couple of years, and somehow we managed to find a lot more money for the end of year balance ones. We're not gonna have any money. Oh, look, we can fully fund them all. So it's just, you remember that? So I just wonder, how's it gonna look to the voters? Like, if you want 500,000, then why is this not 365 or 65?
Because I think we were trying to find a number that could be potentially there. I mean, I don't think this money's gonna be there
Well,
end
you
of the
may
year
get
anyways.
the other one 365 and this one 135
Yeah,
for
and then
a
you have,
total of 500.
yeah.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, this one makes it easy to vote no on the other one. It sucks, but, and I hear you, but you're setting yourself up to not get the other one. 'Cause like, oh, we're already putting money into that fund.
Yeah, and like I said,
And
we
then,
want to.
and then if there is no money, then well, now you get no money.
We wanted to present everything tonight, put it in front of you, the different things we were thinking, right, different options that we are. We'll finalize this at our own board meeting, in a couple of weeks. This was something that we discussed new last night, right? It wasn't on our set of 10 that we presented initially last night. But I think what we're trying to stress for you, for everybody, is the importance of putting money away in this fund, right? Like, we know the need is there. We know it's coming. We know it's coming, so let's start putting the money away. By hook or by crook, we gotta start putting money away.
Other questions on Article 11 this evening? Okay. Any other comments from school board or school administration on the currently constructed proposed warrant articles? Okay. So I know, just to recap follow-up, we talked about I just want to go back. We talked about the LSSA contract. We talked about the breakdown for the default in Article 1. Was there anything else I'm missing that we talked about for follow-up? I think those were the two things. Was there anything else you had, Julie?
No,
Is that
I
it?
think that is it.
Okay.
That's all.
We are going on a little bit of holiday break, so if this
Thank
doesn't
God.
come right away, the information, I
Monday,
apologize.
right? Monday.
I
So
need to
while-
see my family at some point, so.
While the superintendent is here, I know I sent the question to you. I don't know if we've gotten a response as far as the ropes.
Oh, yeah, good question.
He did. Did I not forward you his response? That's on me. My bad.
So I met with, I forget the gentleman's name right now, Ryan was his first name, he came to my office. He had been part of the program in the past. He works for Wingspeed, which is one of these ropes course companies. They do the training connected to it. They make sure the rope courses are certified and stuff like that. So he gave me a bunch of, we had a good discussion. I asked his opinions, what he thought of it, because he was familiar with our course. He says, it's a good course. He's like, but if you're done with it, then you should take it down. But there might be others in the area that would utilize your course. So when he gave me a list of his contacts from Wingspeed, we're going to start slowly reaching out to them to see if this is something that can actually be beneficial, like financially for us, right? Because if there's groups that that are certified instructors and want to come use our course and host stuff, we could potentially charge, for use of the course, right? And that could offset some of the upkeep and some of the costs that are associated with that. So we want to kind of explore that option. If that doesn't gain traction, then I think we're going to make the decision to kind of close down the course, right? In terms of the budget, I think we put $5,000 in there for either repairs. It's in a repairs line, but if we were elect to shut down the course, there would be a cost associated with taking everything down, and that's what we would use that course. My hope is by the end of, sooner than later, but at a minimum by the end of the school year, we have a definite answer on what the direction is that we're going with it. Because that work of, if we were to take it down, would most likely have to occur over the summer when we can get in there and get that stuff kind of done.
You don't want to do it in the snow? What?
No, don't want to do it in the summer.
Meaning we would, either way, we'd want to keep the money in there as it's currently constructed, whether it's to continue with or to take it
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I think a year from now, either if we take the course down, you'll see no money obviously associated with the ropes course, or if we elect to keep it in, what is the plan with the ropes course moving forward? If there's a profitability standpoint from it, here's what the
See,
plan is
revenue,
associated,
huh?
right? If it's just like, hey, this is the curricular use of it, this is how we're gonna justify it, this is the cost associated with it, so, yeah.
All right.
One other item I just wanted to bring up is I did receive a contract from Eastern Propane to keep the rate that we currently have of $1.95 a gallon through 2026.
27, I thought.
Correction, it's through
Oh, it's
2026.
My bad.
They no, it's actually my bad. I missed, the person that I spoke to misspoke, so when I had the contract,
Got
it
it.
was actually 2026, which makes more sense.
That does make more sense.
Great. Thank you. Thank you both for being here tonight.
Can I ask one question for the meeting?
Sure.
And it's related to the lunch funding. I heard it's said that we have to raise the full amount that's anticipated to be spent, and then there's a credit that comes back from federal government or somewhere.
Correct, so we raise all the money associated with the food service program. It's a separate account than the Fund 10 account. That is your general school operations, everything else. It's its own separate entity. This is by law, it has to be done this way.
Okay.
Because there's money associated with it from the federal government, we get a credit from the federal government for the food service program. Don't quote me on the exact number. I think it's like $100,000 or something like that. And we have to meet certain requirements and certain ways to come into all of that. And then the rest of the food service, we're generating sales from it, right? And so that cost goes into it. But we have to raise all the money ahead of time because we have to make sure we have money for salaries and benefits for the equipment, for any food purchases
Buy
we're gonna
food.
make and stuff like
Okay,
that.
my question then becomes, when a grant comes back, that doesn't contribute toward the
Unassigned fund balance.
unassigned fund
No,
balance.
because it's a separate.
It comes to us as revenues.
Yeah.
Right, so it
He's
comes into
asking,
our
does
account.
it go into the?
No, it does not go into the unassigned
fund balance,
Right.
yeah. Because
For
it's a
that
separate
specific
fund
purpose.
from the general operating budget.
I mean, my hope, because it is one of the few bipartisan issues we have, is free lunch and breakfast for all. Like, that is something that I know the Superintendent's Association, the Business Administrators Association, and many people in education, we're the only New England state that doesn't provide that, that's something that is gonna be at least pushed from the educational side as we go into
How do
this
the other
new
states
process.
fund it?
I'm not 100% sure how it all works, but I think it's just something the states absorb, you know?
And where do the states get their money in the state?
Well, you know, it's different, right there.
We're already talking about property taxes.
But you know, the state has done this in the past. They did it during COVID.
Yeah, the
right?
feds paid for it. Now you're asking for your neighbors who are struggling, apparently welfare and other
Paying
stuff.
for it one way or the other, though,
Yeah.
right?
Well-
Like so.
Well, yeah, some of us feel that that's wise, and some of us think it should go back to self-funded, so there is that.
All right, thank you both for being here.
Yeah, no
Appreciate
problem.
it. All right, we are going to transition to the town. I'll invite Ms. Kleiner up. Ms. White, I think you're joining as well. Before we jump into going through all of the warrant articles in a similar format and fashion that we did with the school, I'm gonna let Ms. Kleiner start because she has some general updates pertaining to revenues that impact our conversations this evening. So I'm gonna let her, before we get into the warrant articles, turn it over to Ms. Kleiner.
Good evening.
Good evening.
At first, I'm going to apologize, and so you are hearing some of this information tonight, timing-wise, before the Board
you.
of Selectmen,
Thank
who
you.
will hear some of it on Monday night. That is only because of the timing of the calculations.
Don't ever apologize for taking a well-deserved vacation.
And yes, and some of it is because I was on vacation last week. And so, but some of this, if you remember back to last year, this conversation kind of came up in January when we were discussing the highway worker, and we came back to you and said, oh, wait a minute, our revenues are up. And understandably, there was a lot of conversation about that because it was like, wait a minute, this money's suddenly found. And we said, and we tried to explain that the way the town budget works and the town revenues work, we may not know until later in the budget process what those revenues look like compared to the budget and how they can be used or what our unassigned fund balance addition it potentially may be. So this year, as soon as I got back from vacation, I started to really look at those numbers so that we would have a thorough conversation on what we thought would be an additional unassigned fund balance or added to the unassigned fund balance at the end of 2024, right? So we saw our unassigned fund balance really jump at the end of last year. And the conversation can always be had, could we have used some of that funding to fund warrant articles instead of taxation? And so the first part of that would be, what's our 2024 budget that we expect to be unspent? So we looked at that. And so it's roughly about $400,000. About almost 75% of it is from the police department. And that's unfilled positions, during the year, associated health insurance that comes with that, and associated police retirement that comes with that. And then there's some small, like code enforcement, we are without a building inspector for a period of time, so there's some smaller amounts that come with that. So about 400,000. More importantly, there's a revenue component to that. So there's really three areas where our revenues are higher than what is budgeted. The first being motor vehicles. We already see motor vehicles up about $78,000. And that's as now. So any additional for the rest of the month would just be more on top of that.
That's 78,000 over budgeted?
Over budget, yes. So, we attribute some of that to additional residents that have moved into the area. As you know, we have two established new building developments that have now occupied at least Rose Meadows to some extent. Corning Farms, pretty much everything that's built so far. It's always a number that you're estimating, right? You never really know how many people are going to, and there's so many factors into that, new cars versus old cars, the whole 9 yards. So there's that. Then there is about $70,000 in an over budget in building permits. And that you can pretty much accumulate a lot of that to the new developments, right? So these are large developments, somewhat new to what Litchfield has seen in the past, especially to the extent of Rose Meadows. So that's $70,000 over budget. And then there's about $103,000 in interest
Can you say
over
that,
budget.
Say that number again.
102 to 103.
102,000.
Yeah. And this is where we were last year, right? This is the line item that we were talking about last year, where we saw increased interest revenue over what, well, we have it again. And I have to attribute some of that to the very thoughtful financial planning of our treasurer and our finance director. And you never know, as we talk about this, we were worried last year, would we see the interest rates start to drop? There's always that conversation for next year, right? But for this year, that's where we are. So all in all, if we look at about $584,000, which would just fall to fund balance. So the conversation then, I think, shifts to what do we want to see for our unassigned fund balance next year? And do we use some of this money to offset some of these warrant articles so that we're not raising and appropriating and raising taxation? And that's, certainly a conversation that has to be had by the Board of Selectmen. You saw the unassigned fund balance come in at, a little over 11%. Our policy is 8 to 12. I think if you see all of this fall to unassigned fund balance based on the estimated net operating expenses, which is somewhat of a moving figure for me to calculate. I can calculate the town side. It's a little different with the school side. But using a rough number based on their presentations of their budget, I think we could be very close to that 12%, if not a little over. if we let all of this fall to fund balance. So,
I can
my-
just ask for a correction in the
Yeah.
number. You said it was 500 something?
Mhm.
The numbers you just gave us come up to 650.
650 was what-
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have the 77, thousand in, motor vehicles, because that was new today. So yes, you're right. So I looked at what could be done. And if we used some of that money to fund the warrant articles that are currently slated from taxation, so.
Which there's
you
four
have
of them.
four. You have the police car, you have the health agencies, you have the fire, extra hours, and you have the library, right? If we looked at funding those,
It's about $140,000.
I don't think that's a wise choice, though.
Not the
Guys, if
fire
we-
after hours, because that's gonna be recurring.
That's gonna be very, towards the library hours.
Yeah.
So those.
I would definitely say the police guy, because that's one of my thoughts on it. It's like, you already have one in the budget. You're looking for one unassigned fund balance. I would have voted against the third one.
Right.
With the warrant article, it's like, because I don't think people, when they vote for the warrant article, are gonna know that it's in the budget, if they vote for it.
So you're saying take two from the unassigned fund balance?
Mhm.
I mean, that is a good way to try to make a dent in our concerns of our aging fleet.
And then you have a third one in their budget.
I agree with that.
Brian and I are gonna agree. Must be the way to go.
I'm gonna, my recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, and I certainly want to get the Budget Committee's feeling on this, take the third out of the budget.
No.
See, I thought of that too, but you want to keep it, and we've been discussing this, that it's in the budget, and really that's what it should be, because it's recurring.
Because I think if you buy three this year, we need to put one back into the budget for next year, and I believe we can do that. Here's my thought. You're moving into a revaluation. When you move into a revaluation year, you want to budget as low as possible. So you want to have any increase to your budget be as low as possible in a revaluation year, and that's standard. We saw this in Nashua, we saw it in Manchester, we saw it in Hudson, we saw it in Salem.
Why? Why would it matter? The valuation of my property is the valuation of my property, regardless of
Not
what
for,
I think.
so remember, the tax rate on a revaluation fluctuates with the assessed valuation, but it's not across the board the same for everybody.
Right.
People get hit differently.
Oh, okay, yep.
So if you are negating
up,
that
third down.
variable, right. So I'm not worried about putting that car into the 2026 budget. We'll find a way to do it. But
Wait,
for
isn't
this
the
year,
tower, isn't the tower paid off next year?
Yes, this is the last year.
So.
That's 100.
I just don't think, you don't want to get stuck
Where we are right
where
now.
we are right now, like, we haven't gotten a vehicle for a couple of years.
right, but to Carrie's point, we have funds for 2026 that are going to allow us to put that
I hear what
vehicle
Brian's saying,
back
because what
in.
Brian's saying is you don't want to pull it out and then not be able to put it back in.
Just pull it out, now it affects the tax cap for next year too, so it makes it harder to put it back in.
I just think that I hear you, but I've been trying to get a police car back into the budget, because we used to be a 2-1-2 system. That's the way it used to be. And so, the fact that we've gone 0-0-0-0-0 makes me nervous.
Yeah, I think if you looking to like bring your budget down and find something else to like pull out of there.
Ms. Kleiner, one thing that I think I didn't think about earlier is, and somebody alluded to this earlier too, we will have up to four budget committee positions on the ballot. Potentially up to 4. So I think, to Brian's point and thinking about consistency, that should be a factor in that.
I just think it's good practice. Like, we've been talking about trying to get it back in. There's an opportunity to get it back in. We took it out because because of a tax cap issue, we had to make that sacrifice.
I don't think anybody's arguing with you of lowering the budget overall to get to where we, to flatten out as much of that reevaluation as possible. I think what I'm hearing is maybe the police cruiser is not the right way to do that.
So, I mean, we can certainly look at other items within the budget, but there's not gonna be any one time.
Mike,
If that's what we're looking
that big.
for, there's not gonna be
It's
one
probably gonna be
time.
several.
well, I just don't want to get to the situation where like, well, we were able to fund 2 from fund balance this year. Obviously, we don't need to put it in the budget because it worked itself out.
What about the cell
When the
phone
reality
tower?
is, that's
What
the
about
cost of
cell phone
operating.
tower?
Right, you have, that's what you're going to
Yeah, but-
have.
But
Pay
we're
for
gonna
that.
have a police station up, we're gonna have all kinds of road work done, but you're not gonna tell me we're not gonna find some place to spend that money on town needs. Our hydrants alone or water increases, ugh.
I fully support taking
Well-
the second cruiser that you're proposing
Off a
be
warrant.
raised and appropriated with taxes using unassigned.
So-
Based on the numbers that you gave us tonight, that's 10% of that number.
So, you're not gonna have the same situation. So the financial market's changing. You're not gonna have this extra interest. I'm surprised we had it for as long, but, you know, the feds being the way the feds were, they, didn't take immediate action but now we're seeing it and, you're not going to see the building permits that you've seen. And when we go to set the tax rate with the DRA for 2025, if consistently our motor vehicles has been up, we're gonna be forced to increase that budget, right? So, I just caution that we have this year, and you may want to take advantage of that. I do not like having to raise and appropriate taxes if there is a way to obtain the needs of the town and not impact the residents.
You're referencing right now us, or the motor selectmen not taking the other vehicle out, or taking the other vehicle out of the budget?
If you want to leave the other, so it's basically the way the budget is now, the way the budget sits now, and you heard the police chief earlier. You know, I share his concern with the $25,000 dollar cut to overtime. We're about 4.13% increase, right?
No, what I'm asking you is, you want to take the other vehicle out. You want the selectmen to take the other vehicle out of the warrant.
I think next year we have a easier time with the expenses that we're
Right,
losing.
but I'm
to
saying, why
put it
not
in.
take $65,000 out of your budget, but not the police vehicle? If you,
Cause there has to be a line to,
well, it can be more than one line.
they're not gonna be they're not gonna be one-time costs.
But the vehicle's
Like a
not a
police
one-time
vehicle.
cost. You want to keep that in there.
The police vehicle is, it's a one-time expenditure. It's not like salaries. I can't take salaries out. I can't take health insurance
No,
out. I
but
can't.
I'm certain we can find you $65,000 in the budget to pull out.
And I don't think the selectmen, correct me if I'm wrong, it would be us that would have to take that action at this point. not
Well,
the
no,
select-
no, here's gonna go, it's a bottom line budget, we can cut wherever we want, and she can still figure
Yes.
out where she wants to put it.
Yeah. I mean,
I do think important context around this, and I maybe should have said this at the beginning, and I think Ms. Kleiner alluded to it. The Board of Selectmen has not taken any action on this and what they're doing. I think Ms. Kleiner was looking for our thoughts and input on this.
Yep.
And, whether that influences what the Board of Selectmen does or does not do.
Right.
You know, that our goal tonight, once we finish this discussion, is to go through the warrant articles as currently constructed.
Mm-hmm.
And then there may be, when we come back to vote on these on the 9th,
Change.
changes not to the content or the substance of the article, but the tax impact with the 4 that currently do have a tax impact.
So, I have a question, since the chief is here. Since we've expanded the size of our force over time, I don't know that we've actually changed our 212 purchasing of vehicles. What would be your proposed replacement schedule?
I think even with the expansion, we should be fine. If we can get back to the 212, we should be fine. I think in this year it'd be great if we could get 3 to get us back on track and then go back to a 212. We should be fine.
So I would actually support taking the second vehicle out of unassigned fund, but 2 times in a row now, like, hell must be freezing over. I agree with Brian, and that we should keep it in the budget, because it's an ongoing expense. We need to budget for it. It's an way we run this town. We need that equipment. It should be in the budget.
Any other thoughts from budget committee members on this item? Again, no action taken by us tonight, and really just the town, I think, seeking our input
Right.
prior to the Board of Selectmen taking any action on Monday.
Fine, the other people.
I agree as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right. So with that, we will go through the presentation from Ms. Kleiner. Follow the same format as, thank you, Chief. Follow the same format as we did for the school. We'll go through the articles, I'll read them, and then we'll open it up for additional information from the town, and then take any questions from there. So we'll start with Article 1 is election of people. Spaces are left, I believe, for planning and zoning articles 2, 3, 4. So current Article 5 is the operating budget. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth in the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by the vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $8,287,429. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $8,160,158, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town of Litchfield or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 4013-10 and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Majority vote required. Estimated 2025 tax rate impact is 17 cents, and this has already been currently recommended by the Board of Selectmen 500. Ms. Kleiner, any additional, maybe speaking to the default budget might be good.
Yeah, I was gonna ask the same question that we asked of the school board. If we can get a copy of the default budget calculation.
Calculation for that.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I thought we already had.
We might have, my inbox is deep.
I think it's,
In the tab.
maybe on the selectmen's portal, but I'll send it over
Thank you.
a separate file.
Yeah, I don't see it on the tab currently. This one's,
And I sent this,
yes,
yesterday.
I passed it along, yes. Any questions on Article 5? Okay. Article 6, Human Services and Health Agencies. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,450 to support human services and health agencies providing services to the town of Litchfield? Majority vote required. Estimated 2025 tax rate impact is 2 cents. Recommended by Board of Selectmen 500. You can see below that, which Ms. Kleiner has up on the screen, is a breakdown of those agencies and what they have requested for 2025.
And so there's just an increase to one agency and a decrease to another, and that's based on what we evaluated as direct impacts to the town of Litchfield. So taking into consideration the recommendations that the Budget Committee gave us last year, we strongly looked over the submittals and the number of residents that are impacted in Litchfield by these programs.
Meals on Wheels is the one that's
That is increasing.
Recommended is increase. Okay.
Yes, and I would say we are not fully funding the cost that's directly related to Litchfield. But we are raising the percentage of that cost that we are giving.
Questions on Article 6 this evening?
I mean, if you're looking to draw it down in your unassigned fund balance, wouldn't this be something you could apply against it?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because realistically, it passes every year. These services benefit people in town. It's not in danger in the future of not passing, and it really doesn't affect, I mean, I guess it doesn't affect future tax caps, right? Because it hits us every year. So if we're concerned that we're actually gonna have too much unassigned fund balance, then maybe this is one that, I mean, it's short money in the grand scheme of things, but it's a way to help the people in town. Or even when we come up further, the general assistance, is that what?
The
unassigned fund?
general assistance is already from
Right.
unassigned, but that raises a good point. Are there other expendable trusts
That we wanna beef
that
up.
we want to look at with some of that money?
Because realistically, it's easier to put sock money away in the trust funds when it doesn't hurt as much.
Right. Yep. Agreed.
Any other questions on Article 6 this evening? All right, Article 7, the ambulance revolving fund. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be placed in the ambulance revolving fund? This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance, and no amount to be raised from new taxation. Majority vote required. Estimated 2025 tax rate impact $0.00. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 500. You can see in red the ambulance revolving balance as of November 2024 is $3,149.23. We spent $9,453.13 in 2024. 2024 revenue received was $2,323.92 from residents, $279 from interest. We've spent the spent from 2024 budget is $10,000.
So there's two pockets of money for this. It is $10,000 that's in the budget, plus you have what's in the
So we
revolving.
spent $19,000 and only recovered $2,300.
That was exactly the look on my face.
It's more
We
than
basically
10%.
spent,
Yes.
we recovered about
Yes, ma'am.
10-12% of what we spent.
There's no way to, no process? that-
So
We send them
there's
to
a collections.
Liens, like, I just, I don't. Wow. Now, based on past history, this is one of the largest that we've seen, isn't this not?
Yes, and so that's directly, some of that is related to service calls. I mean, the fire department would tell you our service calls are way up, hence their warrant article for extra hours. I went out and I looked at what's the percentage, and our planning board did a wonderful job of updating our population, right, because they're in a master plan review. And when you look at the aging population, that's directly related to the number of service calls.
So we have to rely on Hudson to bill first. Do we have any ability to bill ourselves insurance?
No, Hudson bills first, Comstar bills for them, and then when they don't get paid, they send it to us. I bill again,
Uh-huh.
and then send it to collections.
Is Hudson in the same situation as far as what they recoup? Do they
So-
lose as much, like a percentage?
All towns. So this is a constant conversation.
So they may get billed first, but they don't get paid first either. People aren't paying. right?
Correct. So this is a constant conversation at the municipal managers meeting. All towns are feeling this, and we have asked the New Hampshire Municipal Association if we can think of possible ways that we could draft state legislation that may give us a little bit more teeth in
So
collection.
these aren't, it's not a case of somebody's passing through and these are our neighbors who are not paying the bill.
Oh, they could be passing
It
through.
could be, yeah.
Is there a
Anybody
way
can
to
pick up.
know, like, how many of them are like I'm driving from Massachusetts and visiting my grandma and something happens and I have to, versus Yeah.
Some of the problems that you have is there are certain laws
HIPAA.
related to HIPAA. And so some of the information that we are given is limited.
But if it's for a billing purpose, we don't have the ability to know what address we're trying to bill? How do you bill then if you can't send a bill?
She gets the address and
Oh.
the name, but I mean, there's other information.
I'm not asking for other information, I'm saying
You would know.
72% of the people that are attacking are not from Litchfield. Well, okay, there's only so much we can do. 92% of them are your fellow residents. That's something we probably could do something about.
I think we talked about this before. Can we put a lien on the property? Is that something that's legal?
That,
You know, for residents, obviously.
no, but that has been part of the proposed conversation, about, drafting legislation and putting it through. There's also limitations. Hudson has a little bit of a different situation because Comstar is their direct vendor, right? So it certainly doesn't help that Comstar is not our direct vendor. That doesn't help us, but it's not necessarily the reason that we have difficulty either, because even other towns in Hudson itself that do have their own ambulance service have bad debt on. The other part of it is, it tends to be a laxed area where people may not feel it's impacting them as much as not paying your mortgage or, not
Your rent.
paying credit cards or the things that directly affect your credit report as, and then I have heard from other towns that there may be instances where residents aren't receiving the bills correctly. I think we had one, or two
Are we
of those
mailing them?
ourselves.
Or are we emailing?
Oh, mailing.
Mailing, all right.
Yeah.
Because I can I will agree that if it's emailing, you don't even want to know how many months I went before after even parking in this parking lot, not realizing I hadn't actually registered my car because I didn't have a bill to stick to my refrigerator.
You hear that?
Birthday.
It was not registered.
You're on the way out.
No, Hudson pulled me over and said, "Did you realize you're not registered?" I said, "No, obviously I'm registered. I've been at the police department for months." No. So if we're doing email bills, I could totally see people not getting them.
No, I don't get it.
So do you know how many individuals are?
Yeah,
oh,
Karen,
oh,
What
money?
did we just say, 51 this year?
Yeah, we asked this lot.
Yeah. So you're not talking a lot of money per person.
Yeah, that's the main.
No, a lot of it's probably their deductible. Hudson does give us a Medicare rate, so people that don't have insurance, we do get,
Yep.
a discount on
Less than
that.
400 a person. Less than 400 a person. Ballpark.
Yeah,
Yeah, ambulance.
so some are
drivers.
more, some are less, but yeah, about an average, yeah.
And I get it. Like I would, if I could ignore the bill with no repercussions, I probably might consider doing that myself. But
And I'm sure the collection agency doesn't see a big deal about chasing someone down for $400.
no, absolutely, it just affects the bottom line.
Next time they call, they don't come.
But
Any other?
I like hearing that there's
Throw 'em out.
something you guys are discussing at a higher level, something with teeth. Because until there are teeth, we're going to keep doing this.
It's a weird thing, like, you call the police, you call the fire, you don't get charged for that, so you call 911 and the ambulance comes in.
Yeah,
and
but
you're
people
charged for
complain
that.
about their
It's weird.
ambulance bills. Like, oh my gosh! And now in a
expensive,
day with high deductible plans, yeah, I'm expecting a bill.
Any other questions on Article 7 this evening? All right, Article 8, Property Reevaluation Expendable Trust Fund. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate $25,000 to be placed in the Property Reevaluation Expendable Trust Fund as previously established? This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance and no amount to be raised from new taxation. Majority vote required. Estimated 2025 tax rate impact $0.00. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 410. A couple of items in red. Current balance on this account is $104,200.81. The spend in 2025.
That's the annual one, right? Like, the whole point of this one was for the final bill of.
Correct. So
This is an anticipated spend in 2025 is $86,328.
the board just approved the contract for the 2025 revaluation, what they did adjust because they will not be doing the utilities.
Oh.
So they've backed out some of that.
So we'll be down to
Cost.
18,000.
Note though, the Board of Selectmen have asked us to go out for an RFP.
Okay,
So I can't tell you that this company will be the same for the next revaluation after 2025, which would be 2030.
right.
Um,
So the plan is to rebuild that fund
Yeah.
following the,
Goal is
right.
to establish $100,000 balance by 2030. Next revaluation
it
is in
just,
2030.
it looks awkward, cause I'm like, well, you already have 104, you're good.
But you're actually going to be down to $18,000 by the
Right.
end of 2025.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
I would just,
Sorry,
we're
reword.
Clearly,
like, if you're gonna put this in the voter guide, and I don't know anything, I'm like, your goal's 100, you have 104? No. Like, just making.
Well, that's not your balance though, right?
The current balance.
So the current balance is that, but we'll spend 86 of that, so I guess that was my thinking,
So
but
the goal is to reestablish a balance.
reestablish.
I think you should clearly say that the anticipated balance by the end of 2025 is 18,000, whatever that number is, $18,128.
Well, the verbiage in red, that's not gonna be on the warrant.
No, it's for your good, it's for
be a
your
guide or
good.
something. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Guide,
You
yeah.
won't know, that's why it won't.
Right. So can I?
We'll reword it.
Right, I just gotta ask Bob, because I know, Bob, you say it every year too, like you're against it, and I should know why, but why are you against this? I know you've
Because
said
I
it.
wanted it to go out to, bid,
Me
because
too.
it's such a high number,
Okay.
$100,000.
You might be a yes
And you're
this
It
time.
took me 5 years, but we got it.
That'd be a yes next time.
But that's the only reason, because you want it to go out to bid.
Any other
We'll see what's out there.
Any other questions on Article 8 this evening? All right, Article 9, new police department building.
Oh, boy.
Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,964,832 for the purpose of constructing and equipping a new police department building, and to authorize the issuance of not more than $5,964,832 of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Financial Act, RSA 33, and to authorize the selectmen to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and to determine the rate of interest thereon and the maturity of other terms thereof, and to authorize the selectmen to take any other action relative thereto. 3/5 ballot vote required. Estimated 2025 tax rate impact $0, 0 cents. In red, or the notes associated with this, the current notes associated with this, the estimated 2025 tax rate impact $0, 0 cents, because the first bond payment would be in February of 2026. Language currently being reviewed by bond counsel, recommended by Board of Selectmen 500. Ms. Kleiner.
Okay.
Please tell me this
there's-
presentation
There's a
goes.
lot here. And there's a lot to this process. So the police chief and I just met with, what they call bond counsel. We'll be hiring the same counsel, we hope, if the board approves it, Monday evening, that dealt with us for the fire department bond, right? So that's a separate lawyer that walks the town through the process. That contract, which will go to the Board of Selectmen, is average $6,500 to $8,000 in expense just for that. And so we're debating on, we think we could use the 2025 budget to pay for that.
Why would you not
That is
use the
not
impact
into
fees?
the, I'm sorry?
Don't you have impact fees associated?
Or we could use impact fees, yes. So that's not in this number. Once we got through that process and we talked about timeline, there wouldn't be a sale of the bond until July. The first bond payment wouldn't be due until February of 2026. The Municipal Bond Bank is running us some numbers so that we would have information on what the bond payments would be as requested by the Board of Selectmen. So there's a lot more information on this coming, and it's going to be coming relatively quickly. So we understand the concern, that there's not more currently, but it's all in the works and it will be flowing in.
Can I ask a quick question on that part? Do you anticipate having all of that information in place by the January 16th budget hearing?
So we can have the bond schedules, but those will change dependent upon interest, right? So you have to be careful to say that those aren't the final, because they are fluctuating.
Well, you technically should have them before the budget hearing, because we shouldn't be voting on material we haven't seen that early. Like, we'd have to actually have it by the 9th.
Right, yes. To vote on it, correct, yes.
So, I'm,
Looking worst
before,
case
well, then it's a no. So it's, I have concerns, so I'd like to see how many of them you'd like to address before I drill into this.
Oh, it's the
Are you done?
Yes.
Are there plans? Do you have like a floor plan, a proposed layout? I will say, thank you. This is about less than half of what was being proposed by a previous chief of $12 million. So thank you for bringing in a scaled down budget. That's awesome. Yes.
So everything has been presented to the CIP.
All right, but I
committee,
haven't seen it.
and
So-
I can certainly send over everything that has been sent.
Okay.
There's been a lot of conversation at the
Sure.
capital improvement.
When the fire department presented their proposal to the budget committee, there was a big presentation. They had the PowerPoint, the plans, the expenses, how much it was gonna cost. What was the they were targeting under $100 a year. Like, what is the goal? What's the plan? Because we've nailed the school when they do these kind of nonsense of tax impact of $0 without telling people what they're actually committing to. It just doesn't feel good. So I'm hoping that the warrant article will say year 1, year 2, year 5, year 10, what the expected, because we're setting ourselves up. This kind of looks like last time where it's $0. Obviously I'll vote for it. What do you mean? What do you mean that my taxes just went up $250 for this bond? I didn't know. So we need to know. Before we even get to this, we need to know what we're committing to. I'm actually in agreement that we don't have enough information to say. Yes, I agree, a space is needed. What am I voting on? How much is it gonna cost me? What am I looking at? The presentation, I'm sure you can get from the fire department to see what we had last time we had a situation like this. This right now, as much as I think it's necessary, it's an easy no, because I don't know what I'm voting for. We've had too many people here who voted yes on what they didn't know about, and you've seen what happened. I don't want the town to be wrapped up in that repeat of what we've seen elsewhere. So there needs to be a lot more information.
You can ask the same questions that were asked about the school. You know, like how many bids did you receive as far as doing this? I'll tell you what one of my biggest concerns are, and there's a bunch of them. But the first one is the very first time this was presented to the CIP, the price tag was $5,564,000. Now it's $5,964,000. To the CIP, there were two other numbers that were presented, and I believe this is with the bond built into the cost, right? Because two others was $6,448,000, and another one $6,784,000. So it's four different numbers already, and it's like, and yeah, they do have floor plans, but I don't know if it's only, one bid that was received from one contractor. Did you put it out for bid? Were there more?
It's gonna be an RFP.
Right,
Has
so
it
it
been?
has not
There
gone
will
out
be.
to bid.
Right.
There will be.
So where do we get the number as far as, and I don't know, we got four different numbers.
So the 5.9 is the final number, and that's based on, so we did have a change which we alerted the CIP committee on, due to a change in IT and the costs that were included
No, I
in the
know, but
original
even
number.
like the two other numbers that on this we received for the CIP are, that's 400,000 different, and this one's more. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so
You're
numbers
asking
still.
the 6769, does that include interest from the bond, right?
It'd be nice to see
Well, they're both
like a
3%, but one of them's
breakdown.
6.4 and the other one is 6.7. So it's only 300,000
So-
swing, and this one's a 400,000 swing.
So,
Okay, so you're looking at the estimate that's been, at the full end of the right of the
Right.
SIP sheet.
Yep.
That's the estimate by Mr. Minkara over the life of the bond.
With the bond, yes.
That's not related to this, and he's just using that as an estimate.
Okay.
We'll have hard numbers when we get the numbers from the bond bank.
But not really though.
That's not,
So the fire department, when they came in, they had a systems estimate, like mechanical system. Look, they went through the entire CSI. So we had a true what were the general conditions? What's my mobilization? What's my contingency? What are all these things? Okay, that's great that they went there. There's been no presentation here for it. Like, there should be a presentation explaining what exactly am I signing up for.
if you'd like a presentation, I won't speak for the chief.
Yeah, my PowerPoint is 90% done. I want to embed some pictures and videos so that it's kind of all encompassing.
So what?
And I do have a breakdown of numbers. I need to get a better breakdown of numbers. It has not gone out to RFP, so I'm not going to get to the penny, but the architect and the builder who did the fire department they worked together to come up with these numbers. Now,
Okay.
whether or not they're going to put in for an RFP, I would think that they are, but whether or not they are, that was, if they were hired tomorrow, that's where they said they would be. And then, this is inclusive of furniture and, just electronics, everything. This should be turnkey, ready to move in. And I'll have that before the 9th.
So my concern is, we ran into trouble in the past on projects because we were rushed. We really had, kind of like information's delivered, give me a vote. What is the repercussions if we wait? Because last time I heard about this, we were spending our impact fees to get a consultant to tell us what we needed. We went from getting a consultant to give us a schematic, like programmatic review to give me a bond. And so whiplash here. I'm like, all right, that's escalated fast. So what is the repercussions if we wait a year, other than escalation increases?
I can tell you what it is.
Escalation
And
increases.
it's something that's bothering me too, is like the school seems like it's gone stagnant as far as anything coming this year. So now we're like pushing a police department, so they're not competing against a school.
Part of it, I would imagine.
Yeah, and it's like,
Not entirely, but we do have constraints within the police department.
But we've had
In
these
the
constraints.
current build, yes, but they will impact services.
Just a question on, are there other alternative ideas being considered other than just building new? Maybe utilizing existing facility, space, maybe additions, similar to what the school is being put through right now with alternative ideas, looking at all options other than just new. I'd like to be able to put those side by side and cost per square foot, getting you what you need, but maybe there's a better, avenue to achieve that as opposed just to say the new way, the new building is the way to go.
There was a study done several years ago, and they looked at all the different options, and quite honestly, that this was the most cost-effective, and especially now that the site work, or a large percentage of the site work being attached to the fire department, has already been done. Really, and for us to, we would have to buy property somewhere. Quite honestly, we're in 2,000 and something square feet. The recommendation when we hired, prior to my arrival, we hired this company to say, okay, what do you need for the manpower to meet standards, current standards, because we're out of standards on a lot of levels. We can't get accredited with our building. We should be at 12,900 square feet. Now, because we'll have a shared space with the fire department, that's actually been brought down to about 10,500, but we're in 2,500 square feet now. So it's not like we can make an adjustment here or there in that building, and short of buying another piece of property, we'd still have to buy another standalone building. Or if we were to take over this building, as Mr. Oblina suggested earlier, we would have to gut this entire building and start from scratch, because there's nothing about this building that's right for us. It's not just a matter of, okay, it's a storefront and we're changing, one little wall or something.
Well, that you would argue that that would be significantly cheaper. The foundation elements, the building, you're just doing interior renovation now.
Right, but then they'd have to build another department for them. And again, it's not just a matter of sheetrock. We have some things have to be concrete or steel. We need parking. We need sally ports. And again, I'm not a builder, But all of that was explored years ago, and they said the cheapest way to do it, I'll pull up that study and present, I'll put that on my
great.
PowerPoint.
You know, did they look into expansion on this building,
Yes,
Yes.
going out where the Sally Port is right now?
Yes.
That was my thought, like, push it out that way, go up 2 floors, build a basement, give you plenty of storage and gives you a Sally Port. What?
No, I laugh at the basement because they value engineered out the basement of this building, which put us in the position of needing a brand new complex.
So all these questions were asked of Mr. French and I last year at CIP, which is when CIP determined, yes, they would approve or recommend the $30,000
Right.
to do the study on building the building there. So that we looked at all of the old studies and the conclusions that had been developed then.
What would be the term of the bond? Number of years?
So I believe they did a 20 when we first talked to bond council, but I'll have all the information. So bond council just did the review. Some of this wording is going to change. So that's why I said language is being reviewed by bond council. I got it this afternoon, some recommendations that they are making in terms of if you're going to use impact fees for more design costs prior to the bond issuance, putting that amount they want that amount in the, that's a good point, right? So this is going to change, and we're getting the information as quickly as we can. We're just going through it with a fine-tooth comb, just for the points that you raised.
Other questions on Article 9 this evening?
If you could at least start with the report that you guys had generated and whatever you have now to start looking at, because it's going to take some time to go through. And I don't like to be rushed in my decisions, especially when this impactful. So give me what you got, we'll start looking at it. And if, my main thing is, I have no idea what my bond structure looks like. I have no idea what I'm signing up for years 2 through 20, and it makes me very uncomfortable. So if I can at least understand what I'm gonna get for whatever we're trying to sign me up for, that'd be helpful, the justification. I guess to be fair, it's less than half than what a past chief was trying to sell a bond for. But at the same time, I'd like to see what I'm getting for this, what's being recommended.
Mr. Taylor, did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, just a comment. So first of all, the town has always prided itself, and I've respected the fact that they go ahead and are very transparent in terms of what the cost looks like. And I was completely disgusted when I read the language of this particular warrant article and the fact that they pulled the zero tax impact for 2025 without any information. And I'm very concerned that sooner or later, further along in this process, I'm going to get the answer of, well, it's too late. We can't change the language of the warrant article. At that point, you know what? I don't want to see zero impact, because that's something that we've seen in the schools and we've ripped them apart for it. And I'm very disappointed that the town presented it this way.
I'd like to see raise and appropriate the first year instead of 0-0.
Can you do that if your bond payment is
It
technically
may not be possible, I don't know.
No. And, my apologies if that was, the way that this came across. The reason I put in big letters in red, being reviewed by bond council, is this is in no way, shape, or form the final. And so all of the information, a lot of the information that you're requesting is being worked on. It was never going to be presented to the voters in this fashion.
So the reality is, I think there's a mismatch in expectations of what the purpose of this meeting is. This meeting should be you presenting us your warrant articles. I should know what you're presenting, so that when I show up on January 9th, I can vote yay or nay. This is really, so I'm not in that position. This is incomplete, it's not ready. So when I'm voting on, you're gonna send me information presumably over the holiday, I may or may not get answers before January 9th. Okay, so there was a concern that it might be the 16th-ish. I might have them before the budget hearing. That's way too late. We're already late on this. So,
Mr. Taylor, did you have something else to add?
Yeah, I just have one follow-up question because I don't have it in front of me. Did the Board of Selectmen vote on this particular warrant article?
They have. They've recommended it 500.
Shame.
So it was recommended by the Board of Selectmen 500 with the wording there of the tax impact of 2025, and yet we're gonna try to say that there's more information coming. At that point, then the Board of Selectmen should not have voted on it with that lacking information, and that's all I have to say.
We've asked for the tax impact. Be added to this.
There was much discussion. It wasn't just a vote. There was a lot of discussion.
So at least for me, just going forward, my expectation is this meeting is where you're presenting me your warrant articles for consideration. So I can ask questions. I shouldn't have to be waiting for, I should be asking clarifying questions. I shouldn't be asking, what's the new build? What is it? What's your warrant article to begin with? You can tell me in November that you're planning to do this and I can start asking questions. But the purpose of this meeting should be to present the warrant article that should be voted on in January. In the past, we actually had all voting done in December. It's only in recent years that we've been voting in January. So we are behind on where this should be.
Any other comments or questions on Article 9? I've been quiet on this one. I struggle with this a little bit as well. I don't deny the fact that I think the police department needs a new facility. I had the opportunity to walk through it a year and a half ago with Miss Stevens when she was here. It was the first time I had walked through the entire facility. Kind of surprised there's 2,000 square feet back there. Didn't feel like it. Felt like a lot less. I have no doubt that our police department is in they do not have the space that they need. Because of that, they lack some of the resources that they need because of the current space that they're in. I don't debate that one bit. And I think anyone who has the opportunity to walk through that space, I'd say they'd be hard pressed to disagree with that particular statement.
I think there's a good portion of this board that agrees with that and realizes that. And that's not the issue. I mean,
I agree.
there's a lot of
That's
others.
my but. And if I need to own part of not maybe clearly communicating to Ms. Kleiner that we wanted to see a presentation on this tonight, I can own that. I saw some of these warrant articles. I saw the warrant articles yesterday when I shared them with the board. I knew a police department was being discussed. I had not watched all CIP meetings. And maybe that's on me too. I think I was anticipating like a presentation and imagery and here's what it looks like, and I understand bond council's being reviewed and some of those schedules are coming. I think I just anticipated more information on this to be better informed on the 9th, to vote on this. And I know if I were voting tonight on this, while I think we need this, I don't have enough information to make that decision right now, and that's where I sit and kind of struggle.
Yeah, I think we're being rushed, and, my position would be that I don't recommend it. More work needs to be done, more answers need to be provided. And I think next year would be a better time frame.
And I understand the comment Brian made earlier that I actually agree with, and I think, Ms. Kleiner, you may have not agreed with it, but I actually agree with what Brian said, that the thought process of, well, if the school's going to do something next year, whatever recommendation is done for GMS, let's not stack those two things together, because that is incredibly difficult. And so I just don't want this to be, we all agree this needs to be done. I don't want that to be the reason that we rush this. Like, I think let's do the due diligence and get all of the information that we need out there to get our police department a new building
But it's not likely that this is gonna be complete by January 9th to vote on. That would be
Well,
discussions
I
You're
mean,
not
with
going,
bond counsel.
you won't have RFP done. We've already had, several conversations with bond counsel. Today, I received many of the documents that need to be reviewed, which need to go to the Board of Selectmen on Monday night. So yes, it's relatively quickly. My apologies if you expected a presentation on the building this evening. Certainly,
I
the
didn't
chief
clearly
would have
communicate
done that.
Yeah, I didn't
if
clearly
that had
communicate
been, I did not realize that that was the expectation. He did come to CIP, he did a presentation, all that information's out there, it's been provided to the board, so ultimately, yes, maybe the board felt they had more information than you folks to make a vote on this. And we will work to get you as much information as quickly as possible.
I think that was a miss in our process, was everything presented to the CIP and to the Board of Selectmen, but not to this group in October or November when we could have done that.
Right.
Other, so I think going into the 9th, when we're planning on voting on all of these, I think we want to make sure we allocate time.
Well, realistically, we don't have to actually vote on this one until the budget hearing. So I'd
I
actually-
wasn't gonna say that, but yes, that
Well,
is true.
because I'm not sure I'd even comfortable voting on the 9th without more information now.
So
I'd like to see the information, have it presented on the 9th.
So we could vote
And
on
then vote
everything
following.
other than that one, have a more detailed presentation on the 9th, and then vote after the hearing
Yep,
on the 16th.
yep.
Are you saying that the RFPs have been responded to?
No, the RFPs
Been
will,
issued yet?
they
haven't-
won't
If they
be,
haven't
and they
been
won't
issued.
be issued.
Right, if they haven't been issued, I just don't see how we can move forward.
But the
But
RFPs,
you don't issue the RFPs until you have a warrant article. Who's
Oh.
gonna respond to it?
We had a contractor sit with us before we had the bond vote of the fire department approved. I sat in the meeting where they were discussing what changes to make and how to make sure it got approved. So I
The
disagree with
first time and the second?
the one before this building got approved. It got rejected at the budget committee meeting after a presentation. We sat in on what was it, Veterans Day weekend, in a meeting. So it was a holiday weekend with a bunch of contractors, board of selectmen. I sat in there too. How are we going to get this approved? So before we even had a bond vote, we had a GC, a design build contractor in the room helping us direct this project.
Well, we did too, but not one that has gone through an RFP process.
You said it's this guy, the guy who did your fire department. It's the same. They were in the meeting before the bond
They were
vote.
pre-selected. They were already selected.
Sure, but I'm saying that there's no reason we couldn't have had more development in our plans and whatnot. We didn't have a bond vote yet, to me is not an acceptable response because we didn't need that last time.
So if we put out an RFP, I have to legally put in the RFP that there has been no bond vote, there has been no issuance.
Yes.
And I am going to tell you that is going to affect your results on that RFP.
It's a chance
You're not
I'm
gonna get
willing
the-
to take.
You're not
So-
gonna get good results.
Is it
So-
affected higher or lower with the?
I think you'll get less
bids?
respondents. is
You
what
could
it
get
is.
a lot less response, because they're not gonna put out the time into it. And there's enough projects out there right now that these people are all busy. I mean, they all have.
So then if
you're
they're
not
all
gonna-
busy, then I'm gonna be paying a premium on the construction anyway, and I should wait till they're not so busy.
So I think our next steps on this one is on the 9th. We will allocate time for a half an hour or whatever we need to do a kind of full presentation on this article for the chief, Ms. Kleiner, whoever else needs to come in and walk us through design plans, breakout of cost, any updates that we have as it pertains to information from bond counsel, opportunity to ask more additional questions, and we will not vote because I think anything we can get in advance of that meeting will be great.
Yeah,
we will
we'll send
get-
you everything CIP has received.
We will go through that information in more detail that evening, have an opportunity to ask questions, more time to absorb that information, and then vote on the 16th. whether to recommend or not recommend. Is everybody comfortable with that?
I think it makes sense. I mean, I'll throw it out there. Does it make sense to start earlier that day? Because there's 11 school board warrants, there's 20.
I was gonna say that, but I know what happens every time.
Brian always asks. Let's save that for the end. Let's come back to that.
It's already 9:30 and we're halfway through the town warrants.
Anything else on?
Yeah.
Anything else on Article 9 this evening? All right, Article 10, General Assistance Expendable Trust Fund. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate $20,000 to be placed in the General Assistance Expendable Trust Fund as previously established? This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance and no amount to be raised from new taxation. Majority vote required. Estimated 2025 tax rate impact $0.00. Recommended by Board of Selectmen 500. Note that the current balance on this is $20,971.80. In 2024, as of December 1st, 2024, we have expended $32,129. Ms. Kleiner, any?
So the $32,129 has been expended from the general fund budget.
So
We've
for,
not hit the
Are you
trust
going to
fund.
transfer the current balance in or no?
We're going to try not to.
so if we've already been able to absorb this in our general fund, why do we need to add to our trust fund?
Because as the general fund budget becomes tighter, I can't tell you that we would be able to absorb it future years.
And have we been working with our legislators to tighten up the very reasons that we're now hit with these? Because we used to run 2,500, 5,000, boom, 32. So there are obviously some changes at the state level to help drive this cost. Are we having conversations with our legislators to help address those drivers?
So the changes that you're referring to just happened due to legislation, and I
legislators.
don't believe that there's any intention to change that legislation. At least you would have a very strong driver from the State Welfare Association.
Right, but aren't a lot of towns dealing with this now? So
Yes, most
I would assume
towns,
cities are in, with more people are in bigger, negative position on these.
so I'm not sure if I stated here or at the Board of Selectmen. Merrimack, Nashua, many of the surrounding towns, they're all over budget. They're all over
Right.
expended, and they're hitting their expendable trusts
Right, so
this year.
the state legislators put in this law, not knowing what the outcome would be. Okay, we let it play out for a year. Wow, it sucks. Let's revisit. Have we had that conversation? Just because they put it in, the unintended consequences now, well, now we have a year's worth of data of what the consequences are. Mr. Legislator, can we revisit?
So no, the association has had conversations, and there's no desire with the state association to change the current
Of course, because they get the
legislation.
local towns to pay for it. Why should they? Got it.
Any
Or some
other,
way to limit it, at least.
any other questions or comments on Article 10 this evening? Okay. Article 11, Public Works Expendable Trust Fund. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate $30,000 to be placed in the Public Works Expendable Trust Fund as previously established? This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance and no amount to be raised from new taxation. Majority vote required. Estimated 2025 tax rate impact $0.00. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 500. Current balance of the expendable Public Works Expendable Trust Fund is $19,927.81.
Wasn't this to help with balance out the increases in fluctuations in salt purchases?
Well, in the past few years, it has been used to buy equipment, and there's been a truck purchased out of this, but the goal was to make sure that there was $50,000 in the trust fund at all times. So that's what we are.
Hasn't been anything
We are
spent this year.
replacing.
I asked only because all your previous warrant articles show how much has been expended, but there's nothing on this one.
There was a plow, do you have the? I'll
Can you
get
just
the
fo- could you just-
information and
yeah,
send
just
it
follow
to
up
you.
with that. Thank you. That was going to be my question too. Any other questions on Article 11? Okay. Article 12. We spent a little bit of time talking about 12 and 13 earlier. Article 12, replacement of one police cruiser. Shall the town vote to utilize unassigned fund balance in the sum of $68,903 to purchase and equip one new pursuit-rated police model cruiser? Selection and purchase of said vehicle to be the responsibility of the Board of Selectmen in their discretion, if determined to be necessary and in the best interest of the town. Purchase of said vehicle to be by competitive bidding, majority vote required. Estimated 2025 tax rate impact $0.00, recommended by Board of Selectmen 500. Any additional new discussion on this item?
Just one question, I was just thinking. And the answer is probably no. If you're buying more than one, can you get a better price if you were to buy all three? I mean, I don't know if
The
they.
chief shaking his head no.
No, maybe if we bought 30, but not for 3.
They won't-
We're a small fish in
It's
a
not
big
gonna move the
pond.
needle, huh?
30. At least we're not buying 30.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we could save money if we did.
But if you're buying that state contract, it's already figured into the
Right.
price.
This one makes sense to me. Any other comments, questions?
No.
Article 13, I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's a repeat of, well, actually I am, because it is different, sorry. Replacement of one police cruiser to raise and appropriate the sum of $68,903 to purchase and equip one new pursuit-rated police model cruiser. Selection and purchase of said vehicle to be the responsibility of the Board of Selectmen in their discretion, if determined to be necessary and in the best interest of the town. Purchase of said vehicle to be by competitive bidding. Majority vote required. Estimated 2025 tax rate impact is 6 cents. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 500. I'm going to go back to, I think, what we talked about earlier, and I think you should modify this one to mirror number 12. Yep. Based on our discussion about the additional revenues.
Well, then do you just combine them into buy two cruisers, or do you give people a chance to vote no on one?
I mean, that's a roll of the dice, right? I mean, that's
I can mark the yes box twice, so whatever.
it's a roll of the dice. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but you know, you
Somebody might
run the
think
risk of somebody saying,
One's good.
"I want to buy one. I support one, but not two."
Keep them separate. Yeah.
And then you take the chance that someone like looks at it and says, I already voted for that, so I'm gonna skip it, thinking it's the
Well,
same
that-
article.
Well, if they blanket, then that doesn't count for or against.
Any other questions or new discussion on Article 13? Article 14, Cemetery Expendable Trust Fund. To see if the town will vote to establish a cemetery maintenance expendable trust fund pursuant to RSA 3119A and RSA 289-2A, allowing all future proceeds received from the sale of cemetery lots in the town of Litchfield cemeteries and any interest gained thereon for the maintenance of cemeteries, and further to name Board of Selectmen as agents to expend from this fund. Majority vote required, no tax rate impact, not recommended by Board of Selectmen 500. Did I read that correctly?
Why is it not recommended?
Is it?
Should that say not recommended 00?
No, it
Say-
is recommended.
It is recommended.
It is
Okay.
recommended.
Got it. Recommended by Board of Selectmen 500.
Is there a reason why? So, not having grown up in New Hampshire, I know how the libraries are a separate entity. Are the cemeteries also a separate entity, like a pass through to the Board of Selectmen, or are they under the purview of the board?
So the cemetery trustees have a different set of powers, somewhat like the trustees of the library, not
So-
to that extent. They're not an employer board, they're not,
They don't
but
have
they
their own
do
budget.
have total control over the maintenance contracts and the costs.
So should they
That-
be named as agents to expend and not the Board of Selectmen?
No, so the reason that the Board of Selectmen is the agents to expend is the cemetery trustees place their request to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Selectmen approve.
Which is different than the libraries because that goes to the library trustees.
Right. So, the board, any maintenance costs
Okay.
that would be submitted, to the board, and the board would then inform the trustees to remove the money from the trust. What it does do is it specifically makes this money only for the maintenance of the cemeteries. Where if you have it flowing into general revenue for the town,
Get spent,
or falls to
yeah,
unassigned fund balance.
right.
And
That's the way
so-
that's the way it's always been. So I'm just curious, like.
It shouldn't, by law, it should be in an
So should there
expendable
be
trust
seed
fund.
money from the past plots that have been sold? Why, it's all future proceeds. Should we be considering what has already been,
You have to pass the warrant first. You have to pass it by the legislative body.
So do you know what the average proceeds are for, like, say, the last 3 years?
Was it 7,000 this year?
7,000 so far this year.
In the past, it hasn't always been
Yeah.
that much.
Yeah, they raised the price of it, a couple of years ago.
I'm just curious, like, what the average is. So we'll say the average is 5,000. 4,000.
Right.
Well, Ms. White,
And we could fund, I mean, could you fund the expendable trust? I don't think you could do that either. The problem is you have to establish the trust fund by the legislative body before you can put proceeds into it.
I feel like we've,
can't
now
you do
we
the
can't combine
same
them?
within the same article, though?
I feel like you can establish it and then raise, and then transfer money into it. I feel like that's how we've done it with every other trust fund that we've worked on. Even like
I know
the,
the school has, like,
Or
it's
even-
written in there to establish and raise.
yeah, because I think it was,
And transfer
Or-
from
or
the
and
general
transfer from.
budget,
yeah, well, I mean, think of how
or
did
from
we,
unassigned. You
Transfer
could
from
do it from
unassigned.
unassigned.
we could look at how we set up the welfare
benefit.
one.
Yeah, you could do it from unassigned, but you
done it
can't
through
do it from the general,
Well, we have a
Fund
lot,
budget.
I'm hearing that we have unassigned funds available, so.
Yeah, but would you want that on a recurring?
So the monies from maintenance used to come from the general fund, or come from the general fund right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a cemetery budget.
Just-
So why are we changing that?
because right now, any revenue that's coming into the general fund, if it's more than what you've spent in the cemetery trustees, in the budget,
Goes to unassigned fund balance.
it goes to unassigned fund balance.
Do we often
And that's-
generate more in revenue than we spend on maintenance?
No, this year,
2023.
but they've now raised the fees
Yeah,
of
but
the
it's not
plots.
inexpensive to maintain those three cemeteries.
Yeah,
so-
except their lawn care like doubled, and we,
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
you
To
can't do
his
anything about
point
it.
though, like if we put this money in, which is currently going into the general fund, which helps offset the cost of said general fund that pays for the maintenance, are we saying this, we're locking this money up and then we're still paying for the maintenance?
So most municipalities, because of RSA 31 and 289, have what people are paying for cemetery plots should be designated to that.
So then we don't need to maintain them through the general fund anymore, it all comes out of the cemetery plots? That seems like a recipe for underfunding the cemetery maintenance.
Well, it's still in, but you're offsetting it with the amount that's the Board of Selectmen's role is to transfer money from here. Any additional costs over and above would be,
That's what, I think clarity regarding what maintenance is and then how that will impact future budgets going forward. In terms
Yeah.
of, I mean, if you're talking about mowing, you have to do that every year. What
But
if?
that's something separate.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what was gonna be my question, like, is the way this is written, does it include the groundskeeping contract that's in there?
no.
No, it
So
doesn't.
great
Separate.
question. So there's different, this is the maintenance of the cemetery plots, when someone buys a plot, the maintenance of the stone, it's not going to cover your general maintenance of all of your cemeteries.
That's currently a line item in our budget of $1,250.
Right, that's the one. It's the stones, and we don't currently do that. We don't isolate those funds.
So maybe maintenance above and beyond the budgeted.
Or not including,
Including,
yeah,
yeah, something
General
that makes
maintenance
it
of the
clear.
cemetery
Yeah.
Something that clarifies
facilities, or
Reading this, it
Grounds.
sounds confusing.
So they can build this fund to any amount they want, because I take it they can raise prices as often as they want, because selectmen have no authority over it, right?
They-
We do now. No, the
The-
trustees do the
Yeah,
fees.
Right, because you can't do anything as far as landscaping, so next thing you know, they double their prices, and this fund is like,
Instead, this
No,
being
it
used
came,
to
it
offset
came to the
landscaping, they,
No, it
selectmen.
comes to
There
us.
was
The
conversation
landscaping
with the
comes to us.
selectmen.
Landscaping's in
Mowing,
the budget
right.
currently.
right, but it's somewhat offset by the plots they sold because it goes into the general fund.
7 of the, this total cemetery budget was 20K, so, you know.
I just don't understand the need for this budget, this trust. Because the town's already maintaining the cemetery.
I think it's to have the continuity of any money that is paid for the purpose of the cemetery through those plots, to have that be available for
But they don't need
a
it.
maintenance
That-
need.
That's the thing, though, they don't,
We're already
they haven't
above
used
and
it.
They do
beyond.
need it, so they have work that needs to be done
If
Above
there's
and-
broken
To the
headstones, they have to
stones, to
repair them,
the-
that costs a lot of
to
money.
the plots that
Trees
we
fall
don't-
over in the cemetery have to be cut up.
But we
and
already
removed.
paid for
But
that through
No,
cemetery.
you don't.
It's in the
No,
budget.
No, you
You
don't.
don't.
It's a line in the
So you're
budget for
saying
that.
the
That's
1250
just for
that's
the
in the
mowing, though.
budget
That's
is,
not for the other
No,
stuff.
it's-
No.
Right,
another
it's
line.
not for the other stuff.
the
You're-
1250 is, would not, if what Mr. Leary just said happened, the money that's in your current budget would not cover that.
Correct.
Okay, that was, yeah, thank you. My other question, after,
So when
should have asked
people
this.
pay money, they are not paying to fund your overall cost of your cemetery. That's the cost of the municipality. When people buy their plots, they are paying for the maintenance of their plot. Think of it, plot versus the cemetery.
So weird.
So, I should have
I
asked
just
this,
remember having to go to the cemetery with my grandmother and mowing our own plot.
should have asked this question at the beginning
Well,
before
we
we,
used to do it with volunteers in town, but then the states took it over. and
weird.
turned
before we
it
spend
over
10
to the
minutes
town.
discussing this.
New Hampshire's just
Are
so
we actually
weird.
gonna vote on this one? Because there's no dollars associated with it as a budget committee?
No budget.
No, this is the
impact.
creation of. it's
We
a
will
fund.
not vote to recommend or not recommend this one,
Right.
because it
Right.
has no tax impact.
Well, it actually is a budget impact when you stop and think about it. If they're raising $7,000 and they only spend out $2,000, it's $5,000 extra that really used to go
my-
back to the town.
I guess my question is legally,
No, it stays in the fund in case they need it.
Now it
Right.
would, but it's, right now it goes in the general fund.
Yeah, so this will stop it from doing
So
that.
what he's saying is you're actually, there is an impact because it's a.
This
There
will
could be a
go into
loss
fund
in
only to
revenue.
be
Is
used
that
for
what
Right,
you're
but
trying to
this-
say?
okay, so
A
that's
loss
the
in
clarification I wanted, is that we'll need to vote to recommend or not.
So I was originally told by council that it wasn't a budget committee, but
Because
I
I
will
think
ver- I
we're not
will.
raising and appropriating, even though it does affect revenue.
Right,
So
It's
I-
not a tax, well,
but even our
No impact.
warrant articles
No,
that say
you're
they come
not
from
raising
unassigned
and
fund balance
appropriating.
also say no new tax rate impact.
We
But
vote
there's
on,
still dollars behind that associated with it in some shape or form.
but no, it affects the revenue that's received by the town. That's where the impact.
Okay, yeah, clarification on whether we
Revenues.
need to vote on this on the
I'm happy
9th.
to not vote on it, I'm just saying.
Should have started with that, right? All right, Article 15.
Do we vote on this one either?
I actually looked at that when I was thinking of this question, and I think based on the fact that we are talking about rental payments and a lease, the answer would be yes. I thought the same thing, Derek. So, Article 15, ratification of lease agreement between the Board of Selectmen and blank. Shall the town of Litchfield vote pursuant to RSA 4111A to ratify a lease agreement between the Board of Selectmen and blank, according to which blank will be leasing a portion of the property approximately 1,200 square feet located at 119 Hillcrest Road, Litchfield, New Hampshire, lot 009 on map 16 for a cell phone tower. The initial term of the lease shall be 5 years and may be extended for 4 additional 5-year terms, total of 25 years. Rental payments during the first year of the lease shall be
Something.
blank and therefore increased by blank annually. Copies of the full text of the lease agreement are available at the town clerk's office. Majority vote required. No tax rate impact. This one has not been voted on yet by the Board of Selectmen.
So are we the
There's
lessee
a lot of
or the
X's there on that
lessor?
price, too.
A lot of
We
blanks.
voted on this. We voted on this one.
It's not clear to me who's doing the leasing.
401.
who-
Brunel
Right.
abstained. Should be
No, I thought
401.
you
No.
guys, there was no conversation.
yeah.
Okay, are we the
Not in the
lessee or the
minutes.
lessor? Which one are
I
we?
believe there was.
It's not clear
How
to
much
me.
information can you provide on this?
I can, general information, so original, right now, it's like a 5%. annually. The problem is, there's two ways that this agreement can go. The cell phone company builds the tower on our existing tower, and then it rents to additional cell providers.
Yep.
Or the cell phone company builds it, and the town takes ownership of it, and we sell additional space to other providers. What we are trying to determine, and so legal counsel is reviewing the lease, is which way is going to be more beneficial to the town.
Right.
The reason being, if we own it, obviously we're responsible for the maintenance of it and any liabilities for it. Where if the original company that builds it leases to, they get that revenue, and they're not going to pay us until the cost of building it expires. So we may not have revenue the first year.
Right.
That's the, right, so which way is more beneficial for the town to go? Legal's looking the lease over, then it had to actually go to Primex. So we're kind of under the gun for other people to look at this.
Do you think we'll have all this information by the 9th to vote on?
Yes, so, from what I've been told, I should be receiving, the information next week.
So if we go the direction where we build it and then lease it out, is there gonna be a construction cost associated with this?
So,
A separate warrant?
Okay, so maybe the cell company
Mhm.
would build it. Either scenario, the cell company is going to build it.
Okay.
Either they're going to own it and sell to other providers, or they are going to turn it over to us.
At no
And
cost.
we're going to own it, and but we will be responsible for all the maintenance.
So they'll build
And
it.
they won't be required, the original cell company that built it won't be required to pay us.
So they'll
So
build
under
it
that
for us
scenario.
at no cost? We don't have to pay them?
Cause they're getting free,
They're
You're
getting-
getting a free tower.
right, they're getting a free tower.
Mr. Taylor's gonna be happy to hear about another tower.
He's still hanging on there.
Yeah. Is
But
this at the
either
recycling center?
scenario, the town gets free.
No, it's like right across the street here, right?
The
It's the
state
entrance.
forest.
The entrance to the forest is what it. I had to Google the.
I just
Oh.
requested it too.
Oh, that's not a good spot.
I know.
No, it's up at the water,
Yeah, water tower up off.
the water tower,
Off of Hillcrest.
Oh,
Up
that
on
makes more
Colonial
sense.
Drive.
yeah.
That's, yeah,
Is it
you-
Where
on,
the
it's on
towns-
state property?
Okay.
Where the towns.
It's on the state property?
It's our property, I think.
No.
No.
it's our
Map
property.
16, lot 9.
Yeah, we
Did you
own the
guys
water
go
tower.
map 9, lot 16?
I would just use Google Maps. That
Same.
that shows like the entrance to the state
That's-
forest.
yeah. Agreed.
Well, I agree that you may want to clarify that because everybody's going to go Google what they think.
Right.
It's like, no, I don't want that in the state
Yeah, I
forest.
don't know.
There's already a tower there.
Right, but if
The
somebody's not
town's
looking for
tower
it and I
is there.
entered that into MapQuest, I'm like, no,
Right, because that was what I did.
exactly.
exactly
Yeah,
what I did.
we actually have a diagram of where it is that will.
Sure. And how many people do you think are going to go look that up? So I'd say map 119 at the existing water tower or something to make it clear for those who don't go look it up.
Any other questions, discussion on Article 15?
Well, like we don't know enough to vote.
Correct. Yeah. Which I heard you say you anticipate having that by the 9th, right?
Right, but again, so either way, there's gonna be no tax impact 2025.
Agreed.
But
I
we're
think we
putting
would have
people
a,
on the hook for potential
Yeah.
maintenance.
we would have a
So
hard. I
it
think we
won't
would
be
have a hard
built
time
within-
voting on anything if
Right,
numbers were blanks.
Well, there's that, but I would also want to know what is okay, so if we're going to go the route of we're responsible for maintenance, So how I would want to know, what does that mean? Is it every 5 years? Is it every 10 years?
What's
Is it
the
every 20?
anticipated recurring
And
maintenance
like, what kind of
costs?
maintenance? Is it $1,000 a year? Is it 10 grand every 3 years? Like, what am I looking at?
Right, and I believe the general consensus through, both, us and Mr. Brunel and I are working on this with legal, is that it's beneficial for the town if we allow them to build it, and pay us to lease the land. And they take over maintenance.
Well, that makes sense, because
The town gets free service, cause our existing tower would go on that tower.
That seems ideal.
I like that.
That's
because
the route that we're leaning.
As protocols change, we don't want to be responsible for having to update.
Do we make
either.
that determination?
Legal counsel has also advised us that they believe, as well as Primex, so,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, moving us along. Article 16, supplement fire coverage. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $47,900 to supplement the fire department's budget to allow for increased coverage as necessary to protect the safety and welfare of the residents of Litchfield. Majority vote required. Estimated 2025 tax rate impact is 4 cents. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 500. Ms. Kleiner?
This language is drafted by our legal counsel.
I forget what coverage you're looking for, because we just added weekend coverage. We have daytime coverage.
Put an extra person on.
Was that a third
No,
person?
this is not an extra person.
That's what I'm
This is-
asking. What
This is additional
per diem,
on-call,
Yeah.
per diem
That's right.
hours. It could be during the day, it could be whenever the call volume anticipates,
It's the money
warrants.
that we cut, right?
It is.
Right. I was just trying, because I remember them saying, I remember at the time thinking it's a great idea, and then I saw the potential tax impact that we're looking at, and so, I mean, like,
The problem is, if we say that it's any particular fund, so right now, say we had a firefighter go out, right, needs to go out, and we need to pull additional per diem hours, we have the flexibility between the two lines to do that. If we have a warrant article that has specifically said we can't pull from per diem, no means no, now we can't do that. So we can't, this would be just additional,
right.
funds.
This was mentioned as having the ability to pull people from other towns on their off shift, to if they wanted to work like a swing shift or something to help coverage without committing.
It could, in any way, it would be the fire department would have the ability to expend 47.9, whether it's
That language
another
makes sense.
department.
I get it. I get the logic behind it. What I don't want us to debate tonight, because I think it's getting the cart before the horse with the Board of Selectmen as to whether or not this is
Oh, this should
a tax rate impact or whether it is unassigned fund
I
balance.
tell you right now, if it becomes unassigned fund balance, I'm voting no.
I think we could spend 10 minutes debating it. I would rather see what the Board of Selectmen recommends and then us discuss that on the 9th when we vote on it. Because I don't want to, we'll see what they say.
It's going to be ongoing recurring expense. It should not be unassigned fund balance.
Any questions related to the article as it's currently written?
No.
Article 17, additional assistant librarian hours. Shall the town vote to increase the annual hours of the children's assistant librarian position from 706 hours per year to 914 hours per year effective April 1, 2025, for an estimated annual wage benefit and other related cost of $3,647, and further vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,775 for wage benefit and other related costs for the period of April 2025 to December 31st, 2025. Majority vote required. Estimated 2025 tax rate impact is less than 2 cents. It's less than 1 cent. It's 2/100ths of a 2/10ths of a cent. Yes, 2/10ths of a cent. Wages and let's see. In 2025, there's a table that breaks down the costs for 2025 as well as 2026 with wages and benefits. This was recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0-0. Ms. Kleiner?
So I think this is an attempt based on past years for the library to get some coverage. Again, this position is important. We've built a pavilion for summer programming, and they have had difficulty with the staffing to do that programming, so there is a need. They've cut the hours way down, and the tax impact kind of speaks for itself.
Additional thoughts, questions on Article 17? Okay. Article 18, Recreation Expendable Trust Fund. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate $40,000 to be placed in the Recreational Expendable Trust Fund as previously established? This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance and no amount to be raised from new taxation. Majority vote required. Estimated 2025 tax rate impact $0.00. Recommended by Board of Selectmen 5-0-0. Current balance in this account is $25,484.15. Less $15,000 approved by the Board of Selectmen.
I'm totally confused.
Wait a minute. Current balance is $25,000. So is the current balance $10,000? I got it. The current balance is $10,000, and then with this amount, it would bring it to $50,000.
Which is the goal.
Got it.
So what was expended on for $15,000?
They are installing cameras, security information at Darrah Pond, Talent Hall.
Inside or outside?
I believe there's both.
I think it's both, yeah. Gotta find out who's tipping over the porta potties.
$15,000 to
That
find
might
out?
not be a problem.
$15,000.
Where's that going?
Problem
So
solved.
the
Get rid of the camera.
request,
Problem solved.
the request
birds
is
with one
up to $15,000. That was what it was approved. I do have
Hey, at
new,
least they didn't come from the school.
It's true.
Well, sorry, Ms. Connor. What the $15,000?
was the request that was approved by the board up to $15,000. After speaking with the IT director, we do believe it will be a little less, but we are waiting for a final.
So my understanding is they've had trail cameras in the past that either went missing or got broken. Is there any concern that we're gonna be spending $15,000 that gets broken in 2 weeks?
No, because these will not be installed in a place that they can get to.
You so
Has it been
underestimate.
damage that
Dare.
requires these cameras?
I think you've had damage on some of the playground equipment, right?
Backboards.
We've had slides,
We-
we've had fires on the beach,
The
we've had
books,
porta
I remember
potties
she went
tipped
for
over,
a
we've
scouts
had,
meeting and the books from the library were like literally shredded and papers everywhere.
yes,
tables.
there's been,
Yeah.
yes.
There's been a
that.
lot of damage to that, and yes,
Well, I take it the camera's probably just gonna be around the building, correct?
There will be cameras outside and inside.
Around the building.
Around.
So it's not gonna get the
Town.
playground, it's probably not gonna get
They
the,
might put them on the gazebo thing. The wooden
but you
structure
can
there.
have an idea who walked down that
Or the
lane.
snack
Right,
stand.
we,
Yeah, it's not, yeah, maybe there.
so the current camera that we have it's not effective. And I have full faith that our IT director will put them in places that he's well aware of where they need to be.
Any other questions, discussion on Article 18 this evening?
And is there a long-term plan for why the goal of 50,000? Because I know they were talking about making improvements or repairs at various, like, you know, the playgrounds and the other things. Is there a plan, a long-term, the CIP have a long-term capital improvement plan for that?
So they did submit items to CIP, which, so Monday evening at the Board of Selectmen, Michael Croto will be presenting the entire CIP plan to the board. It is late this year. Basically, we were waiting for numbers, and then it was realized they weren't going to come on the elementary school, so we didn't want to close the process and leave them out, so we held it. So that plan will include a bunch of information. I can make sure that Mr. Curto, or I can send it to you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
It does include many different items. They also had an assessment done on the floor,
Okay.
and they are awaiting that information.
But that's like, that would be sizable enough that it would warrant its own warrant article, most likely.
Yes.
I can't imagine that you could do that out of this without some being short a lot.
Depends what the assessment on the floor shows, if it's substandard, if it's, you know,
Well, based on all the panic
Information,
worry
but-
I've been hearing, my estimation is it's a couple $100,000. So I would guess that if the flooring were an issue, we don't have to worry about this because it'd be its own item.
Any other
Why,
question?
why pull the 15,000 from this fund if you have $400,000 in unspent fees? Like, why not just spend it right from the?
Because you can't spend that unassigned
Yeah.
fund balance without a warrant
Yeah.
article.
You know they have $400,000 underspend. They can spend that on whatever they want.
They can buy the cameras with the
Saying,
unassigned
yeah,
fund.
buy the cameras
As
from.
long as they
the
buy
unassigned-
before year
and
end.
You
It's
can't
like the school
buy the-
pulling from the special ed fund just to have the money
set up
go right
different.
back into it.
Yeah.
Like,
It's set up, their unassigned fund
No.
balance is set up a little different
you
structurally.
can't use unassigned fund balance without a vote of the taxpayers.
No, he's saying
It's a
with
bottom line
what's
budget, they can
left,
spend the money
why
whenever you want.
can't you spend and
Overspend the recreational budget
yeah. It's a bottom line. The
to,
whole budget's a bottom line. You can spend whatever you want.
I mean, you could, but that was not a budgeted expense within the 2024
I
budget.
don't know that we want to get into that practice anyway. I'd rather maintain the transparency.
Well, it's the same thing the schools just talked about. We
Yeah, I
questioned
don't
them
like when
for
they
it.
do it either, so I'd rather
I think
see.
you spoke against it. You said, why would you pull the 140,000 if you don't need it just to
But
go
that's
back
for
into things?
special ed, that's a special, this is a maintenance kind of thing. So, realistically, why not just put, instead of doing expendable trust fund, let's look at what should be added to the budget for ongoing maintenance and repairs, you could do that.
The problem with that is it makes it very difficult, like when we're doing budgeting in the future. I mean, we try very hard to make sure that the line items
You could
that,
take it out of the IT
are-
budget.
you know,
Sure John's still
truly
watching.
do reflect the accounts that
the
they're
camera
coming
off.
out of.
The IT guy's doing the work, let's take it out of his budget. There you go, overspend IT.
But I did replace the
Shut up.
urinal and talent and take it out of general government building repairs, but it was $300 and some dollars,
Click on
so.
links.
All right. Anything else on Article 18 this evening? All right. Last one for the town this evening. Article 19.
Oh, this is,
Establish. What was that?
The big one.
Oh yeah, the big one. Best for last. Establish.
see, you're establishing and appropriating, it can be done.
Establish PWW Eminent Domain Expendable Trust to see if the town will vote to establish a PWW Eminent Domain Expendable Trust Fund per RSA 3119A for the purpose of funding the legal, engineering, and other costs of exploring the possibility of acquiring the portion of Pennachuck Waterworks System located within Litchfield by eminent domain and to raise and appropriate $100,000 to put in the fund, with this amount to come from unassigned fund balance. Further, to name the select board as agents to expend from said fund, recommendations required, majority vote required, 2025 tax rate impact $0.00, recommended by Board of Selectmen 500. Okay, Miss Kleiner.
So, you have all received a copy, I believe,
Yes.
of the merger document. And so, prior to the merger, we had actually done a study to look at the establishment of this fund. I don't think anything has changed. I don't think that the merger or the details of the merger are reflective to the betterment of Litchfield.
No, it looked expensive.
So it is definitely going to cut some expenses for some other municipalities and which have greater infrastructure costs
Yeah, and they're
than we
sharing
do.
them with us.
Exactly.
I can't say it, you'll believe me.
There's also a cost attributed to this rate case that won't be filed until fall of next year. So the rates that you see, which you think are from the merger,
The
are
retroactive.
not the true rates that are going to be coming.
So, given that they're trying to cost share other people's problems onto us, will that make our buying out through eminent domain more expensive? Do we have to buy out our portion of somebody else's infrastructure in order to get out of this?
So there's a lot of there's a lot of pieces to an eminent domain case. And part of that eminent domain case is the cost that you will have to pay taking our infrastructure out of the greater system, right? Because that raises the others' rates.
Right.
So you kind of get assessed that penalty. One of the reasons that we have hired Mr. Sansucci is he is the expert in this area, who actually helped draft the law in New Hampshire. And he assisted Hudson. So we're very thankful to our partners in Hudson who have been
Came
very
away.
helpful. And so with Mitchell Group and Mr. Sansucci and others, we would use these funds to put together a solid case to prevent to the voters. This is not the warrant article that would okay
Right.
taking it. This is just the cost to do the study so that your residents had all the information.
Questions, comments?
So what would be the timeline on that? So if we go through it, this gets approved, would there be a potential for the following year to bring something forward?
We would hope so, yes. Yep, that's the goal.
Yay, we might be up against a school and a fire, and a police station. Yes.
See, I'll vote yes on this one and that one now.
Yes, on which one?
I'll vote yes on this one and the one to go ahead and do it next year now.
I know, I was like, let's skip to that one, honestly. I wanna know how much it would
Take
cost.
some time to streamline.
Any other questions or discussions on Article 19 this evening? If you continue to scroll down the information that Ms. Kleiner sent, you'll notice kind of a breakdown of all of the 2025 proposed warrant articles, those that currently have a tax impact, those that currently do not have a tax impact and come from unassigned fund balance. So you can see kind of a breakdown of that in a table spreadsheet there. And then I believe the next section has showing a breakdown of the unassigned fund balance and where we currently sit, which we discussed much earlier in the evening, as well as I'm looking at potential impact to the unassigned fund balance.
For 2024.
Yeah, in 2024.
And motor vehicles, so the 78 is not in that number, which I received today. So that was the difference between the 584 and 650.
So any other questions for the town this evening? The goal will be on the 9th then to vote on both the town and the school warrant articles, with the exception of Article 9, I believe it is. Article 9, we will not plan on voting on that one and rather have a detailed presentation this evening, that evening on the new police building. Okay. Alrighty. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. In the interest of time, barring any significant updates from Ms. Ames or Mr. Leary, let's skip over any updates from the town or school. Any
Just
burning questions for the town or the school?
If anyone is interested in the on-site insight reports, those are available, and FIC has released the survey results, which may or may not be of interest to people on the budget
Those
committee.
posted on the school website?
I'm not sure, so I can ask about that. They were emailed over to us, so I can't see why those wouldn't be shared. We reviewed them last night on camera, so.
Okay, so maybe a follow-up is like, what's the plan to widely distribute them, post them on the website or?
Right, that's a good question. I'll make sure to check with Mr. Shoemaker on that. The board did last night ask basically the leaders of FIC to get us an answer for GMS by March. And sort of gave a deadline of, we need to know what we're gonna do by March so we can go make steps from there, on whatever it's gonna be. So they're analyzing the survey results mixed with the on-site insight report, along with the other data that they have, and the hope is to have a recommendation to the school board March.
Thank you. Any member input, new business, school facilities, any updates since last week?
We met, 2 days ago? Tuesday?
Blur together.
Tuesday, it's been a week. The week's been a long year, let me tell you. So, it's, yes, we went through the survey results. I don't think it was too many people surprised that the number one reason cited for for it not passing was the cost. There were a couple other interesting, and then lack of trust, I think it was number 2, lack of trust in the school board.
Lack of faith.
Lack of faith in the school board. And then the LMS proposal overrun. Those were the top 3. There were a lot of interesting other ones to come out of it. The results are very interesting. Unfortunately, I don't know that it'll be interesting to see what comes out of it by March, because there's a lot of different interpretations to be had as to what the data was saying. So that'll be some very fun conversations, so we're working towards that. One of the things they mentioned was to create a list of parameters or requirements for the building. What does it need to meet the educational needs of the students, and what facility
Safety concerns.
Well, there's safety concerns and like maintenance issues. Overlap all of those 3, compare them against the various options, and see which one addresses the most concerns. So that was gonna be one thing. So maybe that'll help us get to March. We'll see, because I don't know that any one really stood out as a yes, to me anyway. There was definitely one that was not of interest to people, but the others had support amongst them. So that's going to be an ongoing process, analyzing the data and figuring out which option best meets the needs of the taxpayers and the students and the school district as a whole.
Thank you.
That should take like another couple of years on that part.
Well, at least it'd be a thoroughly vetted project. If only we'd had that for LMS.
In 9 months to get the same 3 answers you could have gotten in a day.
Well, you can't
Cost too
force
much.
people to answer it, right? They went through everything. The question is, like, who answered it? It's very easy. Like, if I'm a no voter, not saying I am, but if I were to be, I have no incentive to help you change my mind. There is no reason for me to sign that. No matter what you put forward, in theory, I can say no. So who's answering the ones? The people saying yes.
Yeah.
So the question is, yes, I'm concerned that we're going to go through this whole thing again and still get a no. I'm very concerned about that. The thing is, there's not much.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
yes, because there's a way I think we could go that I would like to see, but no, I don't think we should maintain the status quo. I very much about. I don't think we should maintain the status quo. The thing is, my solution is very different than your solution, and I think that's what we're facing a lot in town. But the reality is, and I think we need to accept that if you're a no voter, there is no reason for you to say how to change my mind to a yes. So we have to figure out how to do that.
Capital Improvement Committee.
What's that?
Any updates? Capital Improvement.
Have not met.
Okay. Any other member input, new business this evening?
Yep, just what Mr. Barker brought up. I'd suggest we start earlier next week.
Oh yeah, thanks for the reminder.
whenever
on
our
that. I
next
knew there was
meeting is,
something I was
the
forgetting.
9th.
Thursday the 9th.
I'd shoot for 5.
No, God,
Hold on just a second.
The facility's early. You can make it to this one.
no. Dude, I have not once been on time to that facilities meeting.
So, and here's the
I
thing.
can vouch for that.
I am actually usually a strong proponent of I want to make sure everybody, and especially because this is a voting meeting, everyone has a chance to get here on time. I think because we're going to have a lengthy discussion and presentation about the police building, I would prefer not to be here until 11 o'clock on the 9th. So I'll start with some common ground and propose we start at 6 p.m. on Thursday the 9th.
I go with that.
Does that work for everyone, not just the majority? I want to make sure that works for everyone.
Well,
I'll say yes for Andrew, but he's not here. so-
Thanks.
Yep, it
Mr.
works.
Taylor, does that work for you? Thanks for.
You're not in Boston yet?
He's got to be on a plane by now, I think.
He's at home. He's in bed.
I don't
He's in
know.
the
This is
bar.
actually, my kids have their music recital that night, so I'm actually not sure where I'm going to be. I cannot commit to 6. I mean, of the times, 6 is better than 5 by a long shot. Can I make 6? I'm not sure yet.
You can do it.
So okay.
I'm so glad you are willing to maintain
Put
my
your
family
mind,
schedule.
put your mind to it.
We'll
You
talk
can do
really.
it.
We'll do the pledge really slow. I promise.
All right.
Just a pledge release.
Then again, you're right, Brian. I can just walk in there and know every one of the votes. Sure.
So we will start. We'll plan. I'll confirm this with Mr. Brunel and LCTV as well. That we will plan on starting Thursday the 9th at 6 p.m.
I will-
One time only exception.
And I will get back to you later after I confirm
please
that
let me
I
know.
have the ability to transport kids where they need to be earlier than expected.
All right. With that, no other member input, new business. I'll open it up for any additional public input this evening. Name and address for the record, please.
Ronald Blaine is 15 Riverview Circle. One observation, I've sat and listened to the whole discussion, very interesting. One thing that it finally dawned on me, or became obvious, we talk about a lot of these warrant articles having zero tax impact. That is a misnomer. And why is that? The reason being is that what you're proposing is funded under the unspent budget for that year, that if it was not approved, it would come back to us as a credit on our taxes.
Not always.
So one of the things that was added a few years ago, and I'm looking at the town ones right now, I'd have to pull the school ones back up, but the sentence says, this sum to come from the unassigned fund balance and no amount to be raised from new taxation. That new taxation was something we wanted,
Right.
we were very intentional about adding a few years ago.
But the debate has always been that if it's not spent, it should be refunded. The school refunds
That
there.
is
The town
the
is, the town is allowed to put a bunch of their money
Yeah.
into their account, their unassigned fund balance. So even if it's not spent on the town side, doesn't mean you're getting it back right away.
The point being, though, is it really is a tax.
We get it.
It is a tax, even though it says zero. What I want you to do is add up all of the amounts of the unassigned that say zero and identify how much that is not coming back to us.
300,000.
know that, right?
It's on this.
Yeah, it's on that spreadsheet
303.
that Kim
Yeah,
sent.
but it
So-
needs to be totaled.
It is.
It
303,000.
needs to be part of the presentation.
303,000. I just said it.
How much?
303,000.
How much from the school?
School's not done yet.
Well, the point being, it's close to $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 total.
On the town side, it's 300,000.
Yeah, but the
The school won't
The,
determine theirs until June.
Right. Yeah, those would be the
school
same.
is another
Theirs, we
300,000.
find theirs out more at tax rate setting time.
Pardon me?
We generally find out at tax rate setting time. They'll announce in June, like end of June,
Understand.
what they're gonna spend ahead, what they're gonna encumber. But really, it makes more of an impact on your tax rate that's set in this time of year.
Well, tax rate is what you
No,
pay
and I don't
taxes on.
disagree. I don't disagree with you, but they run a different fiscal year, so we're not gonna have that information
The
right now.
point being, it is not zero tax impact, and it needs to have an
But no new
explanation.
tax.
Huh?
No new tax.
It is, what it means is no tax refund.
The town doesn't give you your money back anyway.
Huh?
The town does never give money back.
That's not true, is it?
It
In some years
generally,
it does.
it's been a
What
while.
what it does is if you have enough go in the following year, then you don't come, ask for so much the next year.
That's not,
That's not true.
that's not how the town works so much. They keep a significant amount. And the way the past town administrator explained it was helped with cash flowing. Because they receive money in 2 parts of the year, but they still have to pay teachers every month. So they need to have the money in this big reserve fund to be able to cash flow all the employees in between property tax bills. So they keep the money. The way you get refunded, honestly, is through you spending it down the unassigned fund balance. That's how you get your refund.
Okay, so The point being is, if we spend it on these warrant articles, the reserve will not build up to the point where the town gets comfortable.
It is now.
It is?
It is now.
All right.
11% right now.
Okay, so next year, if things stay even, the amount of taxes or amount of these warrant articles that would come out of unassigned would potentially come back to the voters. Otherwise, if it wasn't approved.
I won't put words in
No,
Tim's mouth.
the Board of Selectmen can elect to put some money for it, and you have in the past, but it doesn't automatically go back to the voters.
The point being, it is not free money.
Correct.
Right.
And that's my point.
Yes.
And that needs to be understood and explained.
It's not, but let's take the police cruiser for an example. If it comes from the unassigned fund balance.
Yep.
No new taxation. If it goes into a warrant article with, as one is there right now, then there's gonna be new taxes.
Well, let's take the police, and I'm sorry, I don't want to use this as a, because I support the cruisers, we need cruisers, but let's talk about that. So if we spend $70,000 for a cruiser and take it out of the unassigned or extra at the end of the year, then it doesn't go into the unassigned fund balance, right?
Correct.
Well, let's say that it gets voted down. The 70,000 now becomes available at the end of the year. The selectmen have the chance to say, we're at 11%, we're comfortable now. We can refund the 70,000, we don't need to keep that.
If you go back to some of my earliest meetings as a selectman, you would always hear me saying, give it back to the people.
Exactly, and that's what I've heard you say.
Always downvoted 1-4.
I think the concern is, if the town administrator's concern on that is we end up where we are with the school right now. They returned between the property and the underspends $1 million.
Right.
So now, this year, we have to raise that $1 million and fund the new one. So if you return everything, you have violent swings. The taxpayers
So you're
can't.
suggesting the school doesn't return anything?
No, I'm suggesting we tighten up the budget so we don't have $1.4 million extra.
Right, but in comparison, Gary, when you stop and do apples to apples, you have a school budget of $28 million returning $1 million. You have a town budget of $8 million with a $300,000 surplus. That's about the exact same thing when you figure in percentages.
Then start voting yes when I make recommendations to reduce items.
Well, let's not make public input a discussion or debate again. Mr. Oblinus, anything else you'd like to add?
No.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Have a good evening. Thanks for sticking around for 3.5 hours.
And remember, there's 4 seats up if you want to run.
3 posted.
Yeah, 3 seats.
Any other public input this evening?
I was just,
You're welcome to come up. You're welcome to come up. Yeah. If you want to state your name
I'm
and address for the record.
I'm Nate Lammy. I don't live in town. I live in Manchester. Teacher at Campbell. We had our concert tonight. I would have dressed up fancier, but I would.
That is fancy for high school right there.
Yeah, that's
You're
pretty.
right.
That's better than any of us are dressed.
I just wanted to. It's very silly. I'm thinking about how the the hearing is coming up in February, and I was looking at your calendar, and I was like, we might be away in Universal at the time. So I just wanted to chat with some of you guys about like what you want your the hearing to be, because I might not be in the town to help set up the auditorium. Usually this is like I talked to Mr. Brunel about this, but like I just finished the concert and I saw you were still here, which God bless, guys.
So if you want to stick around, I can chat. You're talking about the January 16th hearing, right? Yes.
Yeah.
I can chat with you for a couple minutes.
Enjoy your trip.
Yes.
Oh, I'm pumped.
Yes. And thank you for all you do.
No worries.
All right.
Thank you.
Seeing no other public input this evening, our next committee meeting, which we've said over and over again, is now Thursday, January 9th, 2025. Warrant article voting will take place that evening. With that, wish everyone happy holidays. Enjoy a well-deserved 3-week break from Budget Committee, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make that a motion.
Motion by Mr. Hayes. Have a second. Second by Mr. Plant. All those in favor signify by saying, oh wait, roll call. Sorry, roll call vote real quick. Mr. Hayes.
Yes.
Miss Ames.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
No.
Miss Douglas.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mr. LaPlante. Yes. Mr. Barca.
Yes.
Mr. Burke.
Yes.
And Mr. Taylor.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0. 8-1-0. It totally threw me off. All right, we are adjourned. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.
Happy
Thank you, Scott. Safe travels.
Did they pick a date for deliberative yet?
So,
Nice things to say about your kids, by the way.
so the town has set there.